recognizing that confidence is not something we are born with. It's a skill. In any profession or any aspect of life, confidence is...
What is this self-talk you do internally? If you don't have a mirror, if you're not alone in a bathroom, what's your process that you say to yourself? What are the reminders? What are the mantras, meditations that you think about before that?
It always helps me to voice it whenever I'm insecure. I'll write about it somewhere, or I'll speak to somebody who I trust, my mom, my husband, my best friend. But I find it easier to talk about it. So that's why I have a healthier relationship with my insecurities, because I take away their power by discussing them. I choose not to live with them alone in the dark recesses of my mind, because then they become monsters, and then they become really, really large, and they're usually not real. So it's always been very helpful to me whenever I'm feeling crazy or insecure or afraid, or even if I feel like I've made a mistake. My dad told me this when I was very young, when I was, 16, the first time he sat me down and he gave me a glass of champagne. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, you're 16, you're going to have a glass of champagne with me. You're going to do it anyway. I was like, he was like, and he told me, he was like, whatever happens in your life, you should feel free to be able to do it with your parents. There's nothing to hide from us. I'll always be in your corner. And, he told me that about feelings. I always had the freedom to talk to my mom or my dad as a kid about anything I was feeling. At least to my father, I wouldn't discuss the boyfriends, but with my mom, she was like my best friend. She knew about every, object of attraction that I ever had. And I think that sort of gives you the sense of confidence to be able to talk about it. And I just think it's a great first step to get rid of insecurities.
I'm just a big believer. I love everything you're saying. And I'm just a big believer that if people really listen to this and understand and take it in what you're sharing, that it's hard to achieve anything without confidence. You could have the greatest experience, you could have the greatest degree, the skills, you could have the family, you could have the money, like you could have good looks, whatever it is, you could have the stuff. But if you don't know how to build confidence when it matters, it doesn't matter if the world believes in you. If we don't believe in ourselves, nothing's going to happen. And
the world won't believe in you if you don't believe in you. And I think, like, as someone in the public profession, my job is to be entertaining and be confident and in every step that I take and in every move that I make. But I think recognizing that confidence is not something we are born with. It's a skill. It's like, it's a muscle almost. If you think of it like going to the gym, and, to have muscles and to be in shape, you got to work at it. Just like the vocal cords, the greatest musicians in the world, they use, their vocal cords. They do riyaz, like we call it in Hindi, but which is warm-ups and stuff like that. So confidence to me is like that. You start using that at a very small level. Everyday life, when you're in school, there were times when I was in school where I used to take the other hallway because I didn't want to bump into someone else. When I started high school, by the time I was in 11th grade, I was walking in the middle of the hallway.
You're strutting around, you're getting people moving away. Yeah.
I was like, excuse me. I didn't even have to say that. I was just walking and that's the same person. But I think that in any profession or any aspect of life, perception is reality. Most people believe that, right? That how people perceive you is what they think reality is. So give them something perceivable.
Amen to that. What would you say are 3 things on a daily basis that you do to build confidence that you think anyone could apply for their life, even if they feel like they have no confidence?
When I wake up in the morning, I take time in the bathroom. Like I shower, I will, pick the outfit that I'm feeling today. I will, sort of doing my makeup and my hair sort of helps me, or my skincare routine actually at night helps me be sort of introspective. Otherwise, through the day, I'm very erratic. I have, multiple balls in the air. Professionally, I'm doing a lot of things. I'm always behind on time. I'm always playing catch up. So at the end of the night and the beginning of the day, I really give myself some silence. I play music and, I put my creams on and I really think about what the day is going to be like and how my first step outside the room is going to be. When I take that first step outside my safe space, it sets the tone for my day. So I try not to have it be erratic or scary or like, if I'm late and if I'm running, that always sets the tone for my energy through the day. So I try to really, start my day on the tone I want to have and the confidence I want to have. And at every given step during the day, I remind myself of the things I have instead of the things I don't have. Like insecurity comes from, a lot of it sometimes I think comes from, oh my gosh, I don't have this, it's not good enough, or I'm not good enough for a particular scenario or a particular situation, or, we start judging ourselves. And this was another lesson, actually, an activity that my mom and I used to do is we used to count our blessings. And, me and my husband do it too whenever we're feeling crazy because our schedules are insane. We're, always in different parts of the world. We do that. We count our blessings, about just 5 things that whenever you're feeling sort of crazy and unstable, that, you have, that you're really grateful for. And I'm not even saying this superficially. This was like truly an exercise. No matter how badly off you are, someone else is worse off than you. That makes it so easy to count your blessings.
I mean, especially watching this this latest movie that you're in. I mean, White Tiger. Right? I've only been to India once. I went there 4 years ago and studied meditation in Chennai for a couple of weeks. But I went to Delhi and kind of traveled around a little bit. I didn't see everything, but I saw a lot of dark things and a lot of things that were constantly reminding me, wow, I have a lot to be grateful for every moment. So I think it's important to have that perspective in our lives that we always have something to be grateful for. Even when it's the darkest time, there's something to be grateful for.
Absolutely. And that's so empowering. That to me is my greatest mantra is, truly and tangibly do it. On your fingers, do it. Like just 5 things. And it's a great exercise to do with someone as well, your kids, your family, anytime. It's just like 5 things, and then you have to just rattle it out. The 5 things that you can think of at that point. But, the crazy part about the White Tiger is that it's based in India and you probably reacted to it because it's shot so authentically. But if you think about it, the majority of the world lives in those conditions, and the socioeconomic divide that exists right now is only increasing. Like even the Sustainable Development Goals have been set to eradicate extreme poverty because it's such a big problem. There's such a large population of the world. And we as privileged society, we as privileged people, anyone who has a roof above their head and meals on their table is privileged. And as privileged people, like that's something that's our concern. There's a large generation of children who don't have a choice in their future or in their lives. They don't know if they can have aspirations or dreams. And how desensitized are we? When last time, you've driven past a homeless shelter and you've not even looked at it, or a homeless person and not even looked at them. It's the desensitization that we as people who have, and that's the differentiation between the have-nots. But it's also a reality, and it's a reality everywhere in the world.
I don't want to give away the whole movie. I want everyone to watch it because it was really powerful and inspiring to see someone come from, poverty to essentially become, an entrepreneur and be successful in their own way. And the story is really powerful. But you took on a role that is, I found fascinating because that's probably not, I don't know if that's how you would react in real life, because I know you have such a giving, grateful heart, caring about humanity, but your character does something that's very controversial. And you essentially, from my opinion, don't take accountability.
Yeah.
And how did you feel doing a role that is probably against your morals, your values, and the way you live your life right now?
I never judge my characters. Like I never judge people. Live and let live. Each person is individual to their decisions. And if I started I would never be able to play bad guys. And I love playing bad guys. But I think what was most interesting for me when I was playing Pinky is she's an American, and I'm an Indian who's grown up in India and understands the complexity of the diversity of that country. There is no one India. There is multiple Indias, and you can spend your whole life trying to get to know it, and you'll still never know her. So this is one aspect of India that is showcased in this movie, but it's more than that. It's the story of this one man and everyone else from his perspective. So it's not us looking at him or the country. It's him looking at all of us saying, oh, and especially with my character, she's woke, but she's fake woke, right? She's one of those girls who's like, why don't you pull yourselves out of your circumstances? My parents worked in a bodega, I pulled myself out. Why don't you do it? He doesn't have a roof over his shoulders. His family doesn't have food. It's a completely different complexity that most woke people don't have the ability to understand, including me. I lived there and I can't claim to understand it because, I have had, basic life rights since I was a child. I've been to school. I've had an opinion about where my future is going to be, choices. And that's what's so amazing to me about this movie, was that I leaned into playing a character that was fake woke and, pivoted when it wasn't convenient. Me and my husband both in the movie, not my real husband.
Right.
The character in the movie, both of us sort of were like, this is not the right thing. But, when it was inconvenient, we kind of stood back and watched. And that's a very human testament. Which is why this movie, which was originally a book by Arvind Diga, which came out in 2008, it was a Man Booker Prize winner. It was a New York Times bestseller. When this book came out, that's exactly what it did. It was such a human sort of transcript, human behavior, flawed, not black or white, living in gray, all of them living in gray, which is truly how we live. And it's sort of self-reflective. It should make people feel introspective and think about the last time we behaved like that. Plus it's clever and it's sarcastic. Sarcasm is my favorite language. So I really enjoyed the tone of the movie as well.
Speaking about sarcasm, was it pretty easy for you to step into that character living in LA then with all the fake woke people here?
I will say that I may have been inspired by my surroundings just a little bit.
I'm curious, I'm curious about your evolution as a woman in this industry. Typically, younger women are more desirable for opportunities in their late teens, early 20s. And it's like when you're 26, 27, it's almost like you're old as a woman and you may not be the young, sexy one anymore or something in this industry. How do you feel after getting into your late 30s now? How have you evolved personally to not allow that stigma to hold you back from being who you want to be, from accepting yourself, from loving yourself, from innovating and reinventing yourself that you've done so many times? How do you not let that stigma hold you back?
I can't say that I don't. I just am hoping that it doesn't happen to me. We live in a world where anything is possible right now, as we've seen in the last few months, years as well. And I think that I remember when I was when I was 28, my mom sat me down one day and she said, you girls have a shelf life and you're reaching that where, the older boys, they're always looking for the younger girl to act with. And wow. Even if they're in their 50s, they're still going to be working with 20-year-olds, but you're going to be old and you need to think about a business. If acting opportunities stop coming your way. That's how I actually started my production house.
Wow.
Because I was like, you're right. What if I need to be financially independent in my life? But at the same time, while this was happening to me, I recognized that innovation and reinventing who I am, even for me, is so important, and being true to the craft that I'm doing and the service that I have to provide, which is my job. So I started trying new things. I started wanting to grow. I didn't want to stagnate into doing the same kind of roles. I didn't want to stagnate in, similar kind of parts or even languages and borders. And I did music. I was signed as a recording artist to Interscope, where I met Bose. I pivoted from that into television that I had never done, English language TV. Then I moved into features in America. Now I'm producing in India and America and acting in both these countries, which are two of the greatest movie industries in the world. But if I sat down to think about the glass ceiling that was built for me, I would never have a trajectory powerful enough to break it.
Wow.
Because I didn't make that glass ceiling. So I don't want to think about where it is. It's been made by other people. So you just kind of have to have, speed and run towards your end game and, have a goal and be ambitious and fuel that ambition every single day.
What is the end game?
To have a legacy, I think. I want my children to be proud of, the legacy that I've had. I want to be hopefully, part of, the history books of entertainment, where I may have contributed to the arts in some way with the work that I have done or the work that I create or the work that I will do. So I want to be able to, as a woman, leave a better world for the girls after us, like the women before me did for me. I don't think about voting today. I don't think about driving today. I don't think about aspiring to have the same job as a man. And all of those fights were fought by women that came before me. So it's my responsibility and our responsibility as a generation to leave it better for the next one. Yeah. So those are broad strokes of my end games.
And I'm sure you get this question a lot. I'm just curious because my audience is a lot of high achievers. They're big dreamers. They're going after what they want. They're learning the skills, the tools to become more confident, more giving, all those things. It sounds like you're doing everything all at the same time. How do you navigate intimacy, connection, love with, your husband, your family, your friends, the people that matter the most to you? How do you navigate relationships with such a busy, full plate?
It's not easy. There's not as much FaceTime as you would possibly want. But when I made the deal with the devil about, running at this fast pace many years ago, I realized that there would be sacrifices that are required. And, there's no free lunch in the world. And when you have ambitions, you've got to sort of pay for it. And, but I overcompensate, or I try and compensate with making sure, even if I don't have FaceTime, or if I've, for a very long time in my life, I missed, birthdays and Diwali and New Year's, and I would always be working, and all I could do was apologize. And my family always understood because, I was working at something. But I think that I made sure that I always call. I never forget birthdays. I will always call on a birthday. If I go to a city, even if I can't meet someone, my family, my friends, I'll make sure we FaceTime. We'll call. It made me very thoughtful about the people I love. I love loving the people that I care about. I love making them feel special. And I love being empathetic. And I think it's very important to leave the baggage of the job behind when you walk into your house and just be true to what you're feeling. I think it's important to choose relationships when you're really busy, because we can all be caught up in life. And, life is like a really fast river. You don't know what the currents are going to be because it's just moving. You don't know what you're going to bump into because it's just moving. But you have to choose to hold on to something when you want to take a breath, right? Just like that, you have to choose to hold on to a relationship, whatever that might be, with your children, with your family, with your parents. You have to make the time, and you have to tell the people you love that you love them. Don't just assume that they know.
You got some wisdom, Priyanka. I love this.
Oh, thank you.
I'm curious about, I know how meaningful the relationship was with your father. And he obviously got to experience a lot of your success, and I'm sure he was extremely proud of you for, the 3,000 movies and all the projects you worked on. But I'm curious, what do you think personally he would be most proud of that you've done in your life since his passing?
That I didn't give up, that I didn't rest on my laurels. He used to always push me. He would always push me to never be satisfied with what I have. He pushed my ambition. He flamed my ambition. He was always like, what's the next thing? What are we doing? He loved hearing stories about the next movies that I was doing. I used to literally narrate them to him in the hospital bed as well. This is my character. And I used to break down my characters with him, or movies that I wanted to make. And, there were phases in my life like that, a little bit of a dark phase, especially after my dad died, where I felt like I don't know if I could keep up with the life that I had built, and what was expected of me by then, because I personally took a hit, and I personally was feeling sad. And, sadness is strangely seductive. It kind of sucks you in, and it's like, it feels comfortable. It feels like you're floating, and it's easy. Light might be harsh a little bit, but the joy that you feel when you choose light, when you choose to let go of the seduction of sadness. I think my dad was afraid that, because I'm very sensitive, that I would have been seduced by sadness for a long time. He was very afraid of that. Even before he died, he used to always talk to me about, don't be sad. Do not be sad. I'm not going away. I'm always with you, But I was tremendously sad. But it takes choosing yourself. And I've done that multiple times in my life. And I think it's such a powerful tool, because the longest relationship you have is with yourself.
I read somewhere about you sharing that you come into this place alone, you leave this place alone. You've got to, build that relationship with yourself. I love that you keep saying choose yourself. A friend of mine wrote a book called Choose Yourself. His name's James Altucher, and it's a really powerful book. It's about, going after you want and choosing yourself, and not allowing someone else to dictate what you can and can't do and all that stuff. But I love that you keep using that phrase, because I think it's important for people to be reminded that we need to choose ourselves when no one else will choose us. We need to be there for ourselves when we're sad.
It's no one's job. It's no one's job to choose someone else. Your parents will do it for a while. Your spouses will do it for a while. Maybe your children will do it for a while. But you are no one else's responsibility but your own.
Yeah.
And what you do with your life and the choices you make dictate the sum of your life. It's such simple math, actually. We are the sum of all our choices. And, if you want to achieve something, and if you want to achieve greatness, and I'll give you a small example. The White Tiger, the movie, I was never attached to it. I was never approached for it. I read about it on Twitter, that it was being made. I read in a trade magazine, I read in, Deadline, actually, that The White Tiger is being adapted by the director, Ramin Barani, and for Netflix. And I was like, I have to be a part of this movie. I called my agents. I made them call the producers. I chased Ramin from Mumbai to New York to LA. I met him 3 times. I auditioned with him 3 times. I offered my services as an executive producer because I wanted the material, because I want to align myself with good content, and I believe that would be good content.
Many years ago, there was a wonderful psychiatrist in London called Dr. Maudsley, and he had a great expression. It's always been my favorite, and it says, the feeling that cannot find its expression in tears may cause other organs to weep. So he knew 100 years ago.
That's beautiful.
So beautiful and so true.
The feeling that
cannot find its expression in tears will cause other organs to weep. So he's sort of saying, if you don't feel the feeling, your body's going to feel it. If you don't open your mouth and say, you hurt me, don't be surprised if you get a screaming. I've got this screaming headache. I've got this angry red rash. I've got this thumping pain. And by the words they're using, angry, screaming, they're saying, I have rage. that can't come
I'm not
out.
expressing it, but it's expressed through my body.
Yeah, because the body is very clever at finding something. I worked with someone who couldn't walk, and all she was, I can't stand that. I can't stand my ex. I can't stand my life. I can't stand my kids. And you can't stand up. Isn't that interesting?
Oh, wow.
She had sort of phantom leg pains because she couldn't stand anything. Believe me, it was also, well, what makes me sick is my sister-in-law. Oh, I'm so sick of her. She just makes me sick. I vomit in my mouth every time I hear her voice, and then they wonder why they're bulimic.
Right.
Because our words really affect our reality, partly because, and it's such an easy thing to say, every word you say is a blueprint that your mind, body, and psyche are working to make your reality. So we make our thoughts, and our thoughts make us. Then we go out into the world and we justify our thoughts every day. But our words are a blueprint. And when you know that, you think, well, I better pay attention to that blueprint. I better not say this kid is killing me. My job is making me want to die. I'm so stressed out by what? The queue in Hughes Market. Well, go to Zimbabwe where there is no Hughes Market, right, and there is no queue, and there's no money to buy food anyway. Then you can say you're stressed, because your problem, the queue in Erewhon and the bill, is someone else's fantasy dream come true. This freeway is killing you. You have a car. You have look at people on 4 buses. I used to take my daughter to school, and I remember one day thinking that, oh my God, this commute is hell. And I saw someone at a bus and thought, how lucky I'm in my car. I've got the heating, I've got a cup of tea, I've got an hour to listen to something. I can talk to my kid. I keep saying I want an hour to myself. Well, here it is. And I learned to stop doing that. But when you say, how are you? Oh, nightmare. It is torture. What? The traffic. Yeah, the traffic, the queue. People keep ringing me, the phone ringing. It's torture. Well, maybe if it didn't ring, that might be worse. Some of my clients or models will say, my life is hell because people look at me. It's like, really? Well, one day they won't, and then you might miss it. Yeah, but I get on a plane and guys hit on me, it's a nightmare. Well, put on a baseball hat and glasses, read a book. Then they'll leave you alone. But that's not a nightmare, it's just mildly inconvenient. It's not hell.
Right.
It's not killing you, but we use these incredible words. This is torture, this is killing me, this is a disaster. What is? Well, I went to the bathroom and I forgot to pause my movie. Well, that's not a disaster. But when you use those words, because your mind can't differentiate, just to feel like it really is a disaster.
On the flip side of this, the beautiful part, when we understand and appreciate that our thoughts become reality, we can create the life of our dreams as well. Absolutely. We can start to manifest our thoughts by visualizing, by telling ourselves what we want, who we want to become, and taking those actions toward it. We can manifest our dreams.
You really can. You can stop being ill. You can change the shape of your body. You can change your digestion. Yeah. You can have physical things. You can change the way you interact with your kids. So here's a good example. My kid is a nightmare. Change that to my child is age appropriate.
There you go.
This builder's going to go, oh my God, that's a disaster. But a good builder will go, it's a challenge. When you said talking to girls is terrifying, you just change that to it's challenging. But hey, there's hundreds of girls out there. It's a numbers game. One will say yes.
Some will say hi. Yeah.
And even if they say no, the only risk in life is not to take the risk. That's the risk. If you don't, when you take the risk and it goes wrong, you learn something.
It gives you feedback for how to show up differently the next time. My girlfriend's a doctor of physical therapy, and when she works on people, she would agree with everything you're saying, because people's bodies are so tight, not because of something they tore or something sore, but it's because they're holding on to something emotionally. And she says once they start to talk, their bodies relax and the pain goes away.
Yeah, I know
all the
that
pain where they can't lift their shoulder, they can't turn their neck, once they let it out, their feelings about their relationship or their insecurities or whatever it may be, that's when they have a pain-free body.
Because the body keeps score. The body holds on to pain and stress and tension and grief. And we carry around all this stuff, and yet we really don't have to if just more people knew, even to say I'm enough every day.
Yeah.
And to say, another of my favorite things is I'm choosing this and I'm choosing to feel great. I'm choosing to work on my website all weekend. I'm choosing to go to the gym. I don't love it, but I love having a six-pack. I'm choosing to say no to Krispy Kreme donuts and yes to apples.
Love Krispy Kremes.
Do you?
I could eat 12 of them. right now. Oh, they're so good. But I choose to eat healthy.
Yeah, and if you say, I'm choosing to do this and choosing to feel great about it, your mind has a very clear image. The way you feel about everything is down to two things: the pictures you make in your head and the words you say to yourself. There's nothing else. So if you choose to run, going, I'm running, so I'm raising money for charity, so I'm going to complete this run. Even though my feet hurt, my knee hurts because I'm going to raise money. But you could run going, oh, I hate this. I could be at home watching Netflix, I haven't eaten, and now my knee hurts, and then you'll have to stop. So when you keep saying, I'm choosing it. Yeah. So if you're an Olympic athlete, you would choose to get up at 4 a.m. and train. If you are a diabetic, you choose to put a needle in your arm. If you wear lenses, you choose to jab your finger in your eye. But you don't go, oh, I hate it. I can't accept it, and I can't change it. And when you say, I'm choosing to study, to work on, to go and talk to this girl I really like, or to put good food in my body, and I'm choosing to feel great about that too, there is no resistance. When you go, I want donuts and I can't have them, I've got to eat this freaking rabbit food, what your mind does is it increases the desire for donuts, because you said, I want donuts, but I can't have them. I want pizza, I'm eating kale.
I can't have these, but I choose to do this because
I can eat pizza every day. When I'm 95, I'm going to knock myself out with pizza. But right now, I actually want to look really good in my clothes, maybe out of them too. So I'll save the pizza when I'm 80, because that door is probably shut then anyway. Then you can have loads of pizza.
Every day.
But you have to reason with your mind and negotiate, and your mind will always do what it thinks you want. That's its job. And if you could only tell your mind what you want using relevant, up-to-the-minute words, you'll get exactly what you want.
What do you struggle with telling your mind? Is there anything that you...
It took me a long time to tell my mind not to eat sugar. I still look at it and go, it looks so nice.
That's me.
But I still look at candy. The other day I was really tired until I went into a shop to get a coffee, and they had jars of jellies, and I thought I could eat all of those.
All of it.
But I'm choosing not to, and I just had the coffee. So working out, we're on a schedule, sometimes just finding the time to go to the gym or do yoga, or making the time. Yeah, that's probably the only two, really eating healthy food all the time, even on a plane, even sometimes where there is no healthy food, then you've got to wait, and choosing to make myself exercise when I don't want to. But other than that, nothing really, because I couldn't do what I do unless I was really good at dialoguing with my mind. Is my best friend. It's the best PA I've ever had, and it does what I want because I give it clear instructions.
What do you say yourself on a daily basis? Is there like a process in the morning, afternoon, and night, or what would it be like?
Actually, when I wake up, the first thing I would say is I love my life. I love my linen, and I love my cup of tea. I always wake up going, I love my life. And then when I go, I love this tea, I love the coffee, I love the shower gel in my shower. Because I really believe that if you can make your mind get excited by little things, then big things every day is like Christmas. And I think when you wake up, you should go, oh, what have I got today? Oh, a world of stress. I've got this. So you should always wake up and go, I love my life. I'm alive in a free country. I've got all this stuff to make tea, and life is great. So I do that. But the second thing I do is I tend to stay in bed and do all my emails, because then I feel like I'm not working. Because I'm in bed, propped up, drinking my tea, and I get all of that out of the way. Yes,
not
very
stressed.
relaxed.
It's more relaxed.
Not stressed. I try not to have to rush to go to bed, but sometimes I do. And I'm very lucky because I love what I do, and I do what I love. People say you work really hard. I go, I've never worked a day in my life. I don't know what that is. I don't have to go, my life is a weekend. People say, oh, the weekend. I go, what's a weekend?
I know.
I can take time off. I mean, I love my job because I get to make such a difference. So I don't really have much to moan about. Maybe communicating with my daughter is sometimes a challenge because I'm so positive that she occasionally wants me to be super negative.
Why is that?
Well, I guess because you have to be the opposite of your parents. So I do all these positive. She's an artist and she does lots of negative statements on her paintings, on her T-shirts, because that's the deal. You've got to be the opposite of your parents. But I understand that. But she's great. But really, I don't have much to complain about.
You have a positive conversation with yourself pretty much 24/7.
Yeah.
And what about a nightly routine? Do you have thoughts that you say to yourself?
Well, you see, for me, I really believe that first it's what you do and then it's who you are. So first you're doing it and then it's who you are, and it's so who you are that it wouldn't occur to you to have to make yourself do it. See, I would never sit on the couch and go, my case is lost, I just know it, it's all going to go wrong. There's no cabs out there, this is a horrible flight. I now have a belief, and it really achieved me, that there's no such thing as being bored. If my flight is late, I mean, I just get on my laptop, on my phone. I mean, I have 24-hour entertainment empty out my emails, look at something. The days of having to wait and being bored, even waiting in the car, my little phone is like everything, books, messages, videos. And so I love that. I don't really mind about missing stuff and being late anymore. In fact, when I was last landing here 2 weeks ago, I was hoping the premiere because I was so into this movie. So, no,
hopefully it's delayed. Yeah.
It was delayed. When the pilot said we've got to go around for a film, I was like, oh, that's so great. Yes. That's exactly how long is left of this movie. But I think it's important for people to understand that it isn't what you do. It's a bit like people who say, I've done yoga every day and now it's just my soul. Like Meghan Markle said, that yoga is in my soul. I don't do yoga. Yoga is part of my life. It's like you don't say, I walk my dog. If you've had a dog for 20 years, you just get up, pick up the lead, and it's who you are, not what you do. And so for me, it really isn't what I do, because it's so a part of me. And I like it, and so I'm quite lucky that I'm pretty happy and positive. But I really do love my life, and that's a good thing.
Was there ever something in the last 10 years that questioned everything that you've done, or that questioned your ability to say, I love my life, you know?
Well, I did get very sick like a year ago, and I thought, wow, how could that happen? You know, I'm so happy and positive and eat well, so I was a bit surprised when I got sick. But then
How
I thought,
did you get through that?
The same thing, the thinking, the belief. I decided I'd focus on massive healing. I kept telling my body that it was a cancer-fighting machine. I was making all these NK killer cells. And I did actually go home the next day. I was on stage a week later, and my doctor was like, wow, you become the poster girl for just going on with your life. And now I look at one particular YouTube and think that's so bizarre. I had like major surgery just a week before that, and you'd never know. But again, it's the belief. I decided I do wellness. I said to the hospital, I need to go home. I went and I got into my own bed. I watched Ray Donovan. I thought, this is it. I'm doing wellness here. I'm not going to lie in that bed where they keep trying to give you pills. Right. And I didn't feel any pain at all, because I just kept telling my body to heal itself. And then later I thought, maybe it's good I got that, because I can help other people. And I go, look, you know, life throws stuff at you, but you get to choose how to deal with it. Yeah. And even then, I noticed that I was very positive, because I had actually got womb cancer. I thought, well, a stroke of luck to get womb cancer. I don't need a womb. It's done its job. I've had a great kid. I talked to my womb and said, thanks for giving me this great kid, but now I've got to get rid of you, because I've got to stay here and raise this great kid. Wow. And I thought, that's good. I mean, imagine if you get brain cancer or bone cancer. I felt very lucky. It was a disposable organ. They'd done a great job. I didn't need it. And so I think once you become like that, it's just who you are. So I never had, oh my God, I'm going to die, because I thought, no, I'm not going anywhere.
It's all perspective, yeah.
It is all perspective. I mean, I still, people would say to me, but I thought you were so healthy, how could you get that? As it turns out, I have that same gene that Angelina Jolie has. But then, of course, Bruce Lipton would tell you can turn off a gene. You can mentally remove that gene. So even with adversity, because it's quite good in a way, because people think, oh, your life's just, you're like Pollyanna, just tripping along, having a wonderful life. That's not true. I've still had adversity. But your mind will always kick in when it's well trained and go, this is a blip, just a blip, just carry on. And so you got to train your mind like you train a horse. I always say your mind's like a Ferrari, and if you've never driven a Ferrari, it's going to go all over the place. But if you have Ferrari driving lessons, you're going to run that Ferrari. The Ferrari should not be running you. If you get on a horse you've never ridden, it's going to go everywhere. But if you have some horse riding skills, you say go there, and it goes. So I see my mind like a horse, and I am the rider.
When we live in stress, we live in separation, right? Because our senses fool us into believing you're there and I'm here, and everybody is separate from us, and everything is separate from us. That's 3D reality, right? But as you start opening this center, all of a sudden, when you become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and no time, right? That's the moment that your consciousness lines up with the consciousness of the field. That's when you are totally present. Now, here's the deal. If I can get people to believe that just because they can't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist, if they can just connect and pay attention to that field and stay present with it and become more aware of it, moment after moment after moment, every interaction with that invisible field, every experience lays down new circuits in their brain for them to perceive more of it, right? So then as they keep their attention on it, they start moving closer and closer to it, so they experience less separation and more oneness and wholeness. So then when that happens, there's a cascade of all kinds of physical and chemical and energetic things that begin to happen. So for me, the best way that I can describe that field is it's intelligent love. It's greater levels of order and unity and oneness. And when you strike it and you hit it, it is the most incredibly electric feeling you will ever have. It is the most familiar, unfamiliar feeling you will ever have. You will swear that you are ancient in that moment, and you will connect. And it won't be just like love for your puppy. You will feel it in every single cell of your body. And I mean like a vibration, a coherence where your body becomes electric. And the only way we can describe that is love. You taste that one time.
You want it all the time.
Here's what I say. I always say, the first time it happens, the first time it happened to me, and every time since, when I come back to my senses, I always say the same thing. Joe Dispenza, you got this all wrong. Because some veneer, some conditioning is lifted. You start realizing that the way you think life isn't that way. So now, when I've had those moments, Louis, I have said, there cannot be any more love than this until the next experience.
Till the next time.
I mean, how much is there, right? I mean,
wow.
you get super humbled.
When was the last time?
Ooh, about 5 days ago, yeah.
What was the moment?
Oh, I just had a very profound mystical experience. I was, I'll tell you the short story.
And how often does it happen also?
I don't know. I mean, I live for them.
Yeah. So you try to do it every month if you can? Or
no,
weekly?
I just do the meditations, and then when they happen, if I'm just in the right place and I don't have a plane to catch or an email to answer, and I have a little laxity and I can kind of surrender into the moment, I just... I had this incredible, I don't know how to describe this, but there was a geometric pattern, like mandala, I don't know what it was, and it moved right through my entire body, and it was like working with me, with my physical body, and wow. If I could surrender to it, it was just incredible bliss. I mean, incredible bliss. I mean, I don't know how to describe it. And wow. and when that occurs, when it happened to me, I had this. My heart was just lit up, like it was an experience. It wasn't a physical experience, you know. It was from within. And here's the weird thing: every time it happens, my heart feels alive, like it lasts for days. Like the emotion from the experience lasts for days. And people are like, what's up with you? Like, what? And you're just kind of got
so
this,
joyful.
You got this big smile on your face. I just am so happy to be alive, right? And so I think that independent of, listen, I now know, I mean, we've measured genetic changes, hormonal changes, neurotransmitter changes. We've measured immune system responses by trading fear for gratitude. We've measured gene expressions. We now know that people can signal the gene to reduce cancer and tumors, signal the gene to grow new neurons. We've measured this. Signal the gene for stem cells to go to damaged tissues and repair them. Oxidative stress gene signal. We've seen that in our students. Now here's the deal. After all of those studies in the last 6 years, you can't tell me you're too old to do this work. Can't tell me that. We got people in their 80s doing miraculous things. You can't tell me you're too sick to do this work. We got people that were at the end of their life, stage 4, and turn that battleship around.
Wow.
You can't tell me that you had too turbulent of a past to do this for people that were really rough pasts that are now free. You can't tell me you've never meditated before. We have people that have never meditated before, the most profound mystical experience. Wow. You can't tell me you're too overweight, too underweight, too out of shape, too in shape. You can't tell me that anymore, because all colors, all races, everybody can do it. That's the cool part about it. And when you get a community of people together and you move them from one state of mind to another, there's this moment, and I can almost predict when it happens, the second or third day, where people just start hooking up. And then when they start hooking up, we're seeing now in our events. I mean, a lady that was blind from birth, 5% vision, by the end of the event was seeing. I mean, wow. How do you explain that? We had 3 people in the last 2 events that were deaf that are hearing now.
Wow.
People with crutches that were limited, or walking without crutches and canes, spinal cord injuries, I mean, Parkinson's disease, in a week. Like, that's gotta be, like, wow. If that doesn't wake you up to what's possible, and you're witnessing a tumor on a woman's thyroid that was there at the beginning of the event, is gone at the end of the event. I mean, wow. Like, you gotta scratch your head and just go, wow, reality isn't at all the way I think it is, right? And so there's this humility that comes, like, well, I don't know anything, but I'm willing to go down, push the envelope a little bit more. So we're only as good as our ability to execute this, right? But as we get better at it.
Consistency of it too, yeah.
I'm all about consistency, and I'm be the first guy to say, do the blood test, do the scan, let's do the test to make sure that it's just not in your mind, it's in your brain. Yeah. Let's know. So now the evidence then supports it, the testimonials support it, and all of a sudden people now are beginning to wake up to what's possible. And just like the 4-minute mile. The 4-minute mile was broken. Once it was broken, we pierced the veil. Everyone did it. So we're just seeing now this same thing. We've pierced the veil, and people are just all in. They're not 50% in, they're all in. And my goodness, we're creating this kind of wake and momentum, but not just for healing, but for creating new jobs and new relationships, new opportunities.
Abundance, everything, yeah.
Whatever it is that they want. People come to the work for all kinds of reasons, and I don't really care. But by the time they start doing the work, all they really want to do is give. Because when you feel so amazing and feel so great about yourself that you no longer want anything, the first thing you want to do is give. I mean, when we see that brain scan moving into coherence and those 2 hemispheres come together, and all of a sudden we see that heart just start going boom, boom, very orderly, and see the more energy going in the brain goes into super coherence. You can walk around and look at that person who's getting the brain scan, and there are tears of joy rolling down her face. She's feeling so whole that it's impossible to want. How can you want when you're whole? Now you feel like you already
don't need anything.
You feel like you have it already. That's the moment the magic happens. So she's no longer creating from lack and duality and separation.
Scarcity, yeah.
The scarcity. She's feeling like it already happened. That's a very profound signal in the field. That's dropping a big stone in the water and it's producing some big waves.
And things are starting to manifest. She's attracting synchronicities, everything.
Yeah, now she's drawing it to her. So then, if you're doing that, to answer the original question, is that then if you keep practicing that, then you got to get up and maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day. And it's just a practice. And as you do that and you start seeing all the fun things happening, it's not like, oh, I got to go create my life today. Right. You're like, I got to go because I don't want the magic to stop. So I just do it because I love the crazy, magical, wonderful things that happen that I would just never anticipate in my life. And so people are catching on to it, and they start coming for one reason. They want money or they want health, but it's not about your money. It's not about your health. It's not about your new relationship. It's not even about the mystical moment. It's about who you become in the process, because overcoming all those limitations to become somebody else, nobody can take that away from you.
Wow. And do you feel like you've answered those questions for yourself? Who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing?
Yeah, I think so. I think,
Or is there questions you still haven't answered?
No, I mean, it's not that there's questions that I still haven't answered. It's just that I'm always changing my answers. Because even my definition of surrender just from 6 months ago is not even close to the same definition that I have today.
What's the definition now?
Well, surrender, man, is just greater degrees of letting go and trusting.
Everything.
I just like when my world is going sideways and my staff is just freaking out, I'm always like, oh, I'm just gonna let go. I'm not gonna control anything. They're like, what? The ship is sinking. I'm like, yeah, but I gotta go against the chemicals and I gotta trust.
Because if you're gonna stress in that moment and have anxiety, you're gonna create more of that.
Oh, you're going to make things worse. So I just let go all the way. And you gotta lay down the very thing you used your whole life to get what you want for something greater to occur. And that's not one bite. That's not one leap. It's a practice. And so letting go a little bit more and trusting. If you over surrender, that's lazy and lethargic. Right. If you over intend, that's trying and forcing. So there's this razor's edge between intention and surrender, right?
Wow.
You got to be able to
take action.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And surrender.
Right. But you don't want to get in the way, right?
Yeah.
So and that's a lot of trial and error, But you figure it out, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you feel like your mission is right now, then?
Wow. So for me right now, I mean, my passion is these week-long events.
How many do you do a year?
We do about 10, just a little less than once a month, around the world, and it's usually about 1,000 people. And now what we're doing is we're doing this whole nother level. We're doing two really cool things. One is a challenge activity. And what I want to do is, we now know that our students can create a lot of brain and heart coherence, but they can do it with their eyes closed in a room with 1,000 people and soft music playing, and they feel safe. But now let's get them in a situation where that would normally elicit fear or some
anxiety.
Emotion.
Get them in the real world.
Get them in the real world and get them up somewhere where they're feeling a little uncomfortable, or they're being challenged through endurance. And let's see them create brain and heart coherence right on that spot. Like this is the moment. This is your life. Like you got to be able to do this right now. You can't say I can't. It's too hard. I can't do this. I'll start tomorrow. I don't want to. That's not the moment. That's what you do in your life. Let's put you there. And instead of just white knuckling and pushing through, let's get really conscious.
Surrender.
Let's get really present.
Yeah.
Let's create that heart and brain coherence, and let's work it. And then make the move when you're in that state. Rhythm through that resistance. Create that kind of coherence. And I was just at the HeartMath Institute, who we partner with, and Doc Childre, the guy that created HeartMath, he said, it's all about rhythm through resistance. It's about that ability to create that kind of internal order when there's chaos going on around you. So what's the relevance of that? A person who's going through a challenge activity that's a huge obstacle course, and they have the belief that they have a spinal cord injury or they have MS or Parkinson's disease, and they never try anything in their life, and we got them up there. And there's people rooting for them, and they're in that state, and they're in that heart coherence, and they go through that whole course, and they've overcome. They're going to walk back in their life, and whatever challenges that they have, they're going to be like,
this is nothing.
This is nothing. Yeah. I've just reset the scale. So, and the other thing is that people move past where they normally can go. There's a liberation of energy. And that's available energy that just needs to be organized. So then they start organizing that energy, then they're doing magic. The other thing we're working on is non-local healing, what we call the cage. We get a person to lay down with a health condition. We get 8 people around them. We teach them about energetic coherence. We talk to them about the science that it's not matter that emits a field. It's the field that creates matter. Change the field, you change matter. We give them the science and the understanding, and then we let them go. And we have seen people, all kinds of healings take place in 10 minutes. Like, how do you explain that? How do you explain a person laying there who isn't even being touched and their entire body is moving in all these different directions with energy? It's incredible. So I want to develop that. Why? I want to get so good at that, Louis, that 50% of those people that are laying down get up healed. We're going to walk into a city when we do a week-long event. We're going to call the Children's Hospital. We're going to say, send those kids with cancer down. We're going to change futures, right? And man, you talk about opening your heart, but if you think you open your heart, but when you get an opportunity to give, and these people have been working all week long. When it comes time to heal, they're not saying, "Oh, my back hurts." They're not saying, how long is this going to go?
Right.
Am I doing it right?
Transform someone's life, yeah.
They left those attitudes on Monday.
Yeah.
This is Friday. This is Saturday.
Sure.
They're hooked. They've been connecting to the field all week long. They're not in their analytical mind. They're beyond their body. They know how to get beyond their environment. They know how to get beyond time. So when it comes time to execute, they've been practicing all week. They've been in a camp. They've been practicing. So you get a group of people doing that together, and all of a sudden the energy. We've measured the energy of the room, and the energy of the room always goes up. It just goes up, and that's available energy to heal. That's available energy to do the mystical. So I just want to get consistent. And I want to get really good at it. And it's not about me.
You're not good at it yet?
We were making great changes, in like unbelievable changes in people's health. But before I step out into the world and say, let's go to the Children's Hospital in Toronto, and let's call up the oncologist there and say, hey, we'll never touch the kids. We'll just lay them down.
Just want to hang out.
It'll just be a half an hour. They'll just be laying on the ground, and then we'll be done. And develop a relationship. I want to be good enough that when we do it, that we're going to execute an outcome. And that way we're beyond reproach. It's no longer a bunch of spiritualists doing this. There's a science behind it, and we now know it. Right?
Thousands of cases or etc.
Yeah, we've got tons of cases now.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know the statistics. We're going to start doing the statistics now, and we're going to start tracking those changes. Cool. So then I can say without a shadow of a doubt, we're at 30%. On the last 3 events, we had 30% remission. Not just like it goes away for a little bit, but it goes away and stays away.
That's cool.
And some people go into the healing, they get in the cage for their knee problems, and they come out hearing better. That just happened to a guy the other day. He had a bad knees, and he went in to get his knees healed, but he forgot that he didn't think about his hearing problem. He got bit by a poisonous snake when he was like a 3-year-old kid, and always had hearing problems, wears hearing aids the whole bit. He comes out of he said he'd never felt in that amount of love in his entire life.
Wow.
And that's the common thing that people say. The woman that got her vision back, that's not what she talked about. She didn't talk about the fact that she could see. All she kept saying was, I feel like a child again. I feel like a baby again. I feel fresh. I feel like I'm newborn. I feel clean. She kept talking about how she felt. Then she said, oh yeah, and I can see faces now.
Right.
And there were these 2 big flower arrangements on the stage, and she said, I thought those were guards guarding Dr. Joe the whole week. She couldn't even see the flowers. She just saw the form. And she goes, I can see the flowers now. But the first thing was how they felt. And he, the same way, he said, I was sobbing. I never felt so much love in my life. It wasn't like I was trying to feel it. It just happened.
So many young kids feel that way about the followers and engagement, the likes, and they tie it to their self-worth. And if they don't get that engagement, it emotionally messes with them. So what advice would you give to people on the internet right now who are constantly on Instagram or Twitter or wherever it is, TikTok, and it affects them?
The advice I would give them, they're not going to listen to. Don't be on it. It's completely get off of it, erase it, delete the account as a whole. Don't just, I'm going to delete the app. That's the biggest thing I hear.
When you come back out 3 days later.
I'm going to take a break. Yeah, bro, come on. Like, forget about it. Sometimes I do certain posts if I want it to be very personal, but I don't have it on my phone. My assistant does. So I'll be like, hey, like, let me, I don't know, tweet Lil Nas X or something. And so I'll do that from myself. And then sometimes I'll like see something and I'll be like, oh wow, oh my God. And then I'm like, holy, what am I doing? I'm scrolling. What is this? And then I literally, I'm like, get this away from me. Yes. I say it every time, which is really funny. But you know what it is, man? One, it's also a different era. So when social media started to become a thing, I was 17. This is 2007. I remember this because I remember watching the Dark Knight was coming out and everybody was going to hate on what's his face for being Joker, Heath Ledger. And I thought he was going to do great, and he did, and that was awesome. And so I just remember Ashton Kutcher had like the most amount of followers.
Yes, on Twitter.
It was 1 million.
Yeah,
it was like,
it was a big deal.
It was such a thing.
Was he the first one to a million or something?
Yeah. And so this was for me. It kind of happened later, right? Like I didn't really catch myself like online like all the time until like 20, 21. So I was a little older. But what I'm saying is these kids are literally born with a phone in their hands. So it's difficult, because so much of their socializing actually isn't really even in person. And when they are in person, they're still on their phones. So there's no connection, right? So because of this,
my nephew and nieces up we were on a vacation, and they were literally on their phone the whole time. And I've been with one of them before where they're with their friends, and they're chatting with each other on the phone next to each other. They go, what are we doing here? You're chatting with each other through the phone, but you're next to it. Just makes no sense to me.
It's freaking weird. Now the issue is that we can't relate.
Right.
Because that wasn't our childhood, right? So in many ways, even though it's definitely not healthy, there's things that we can relate to about kids, right? Like, I don't know, you're in 7th or 8th grade and you're in your first kind of real relationship and you've been dating for like 3 weeks and it's amazing. And then this guy or girl breaks your heart. And then you go home and you act a certain way and your parents find out and the parents are like, oh, don't worry. Like, you're going to be over this. And they're like, you don't understand. And it's like, no, I do understand. Like, this ain't like, but it's okay. Like, da da da. So, but we can't do the same thing when it comes to social media because we don't know what that's like. We haven't been there. We haven't been bullied online and in person. We haven't had a crush on somebody face to face and then accidentally liked, their picture. And it's like this thing. And then you know what I mean? Like there's a whole world of online bullying and just things that I can't understand and or put myself in if I was a kid. So I don't really know what I could say to a child that's constantly on social media. I will say it is, I do believe it is very similar to this guy or girl broke your heart. Like, you're going to be all right. Like, if you get off of this thing, like, you'll be okay. But our society's headed to the metaverse, dude. Augmented reality, next 10, 15 years, phones are going to be obsolete. Everybody's going to be wearing glasses. We're going to be having this conversation without any gear, any camera. It's crazy, which I think is good and bad. I think it's going to connect people in a very positive way. And there's also going to be repercussions for trolls. You're not just going to be able to say the most gnarly shit your mouth because you'll be banned from that person's metaverse or possibly reported and then deleted from the metaverse as a whole. It's funny. I almost sound like a conspiracy theorist. The metaverse. It's a real thing, bro. Look it up.
For people listening, especially the younger generation that's saying, Bobby, this is great and all, advice to get off, but you made $30 million in a year. You've got your life now. You've got set up. You made your art an expression to the world because of the internet. Potentially, you're able to get it out there in a big 100%. Way. So, for people that are trying to express themselves through their art, their business, their sports, whatever their talent is, their gift, and use the internet, how could they do it without wrecking their mental health, without wanting to commit suicide, without feeling unworthy every moment of every day, and also use it as a powerful tool to advance their dreams?
What a great question. I think in my previous statement, that was just to the average person, particularly, young kids, teenagers, but honestly, like even adults, like straight up, if you want to be happier, just get off the internet, like, like do other, like, or at least these apps, these social media apps, which you're wasting your time in. When it comes to entertainment and dreams, which I totally get, you have to destroy yourself physically and mentally. If you really, truly, like, want to you have to be a psychopath, man. Like, all I did was music all the time. I didn't go to parties. I didn't drink. I didn't this. Not to say that you need to drink, but I didn't get drunk till I was 26, which is great. I mean, that's really cool. It's just, maybe I was 25, but it's like, that was my path. But it's just like, and I'm glad I did it. But what I'm saying is there's just certain things that I missed out on, opportunities, experiences, this, that. You have to be willing to do that. And you have to be on social media all the time. Now, that's a real thing. If you want to blow up and you want to make it and you want to utilize this, this device to your advantage, you have to basically sacrifice your 20s. Here's a big thing, okay? If you are doing something where you truly do need education, of course, go get your diploma, do your thing. But if you're starting up a business, college, straight up, I'm going to tell you that you don't need it. This formal education is such bullshit, because you could be taking time and educating yourself, going out, getting in the field, whether you're interning, you're this, you're that, and making it happen rather than, because it's like, okay, here's another thing. Okay, cool. You get your diploma and then you go to some place that you want to, work at, but then they tell you, oh, you need 3 years experience. Well, how the fuck am I going to get 3 years experience if I'm out of college and I just got a degree to do this thing? So it's like you have to make it your everything, and most people can't actually do that. And I wouldn't take it back though. My 20s were my 20s were harder than my childhood. Like, wow, easily. And it was more so mentally and just what I had to deal with physically and going on tour and just, relationships, grinding. Forget about it. It was so, dude, grinding. Like literally, it was the hardest thing in the world. But now here I am, and it's like, dude, I'm 31, and you said it yourself, like, yeah, I can do whatever I want. Like, and that is kind of weird to say. It's a really weird thing, but like, bro, I earned it. And that's not me trying to sound arrogant. Like, I earned it, dude. Like, sure. I remember being alone in very dark places in hotel rooms, like, and I got through it somehow, and I'm so glad I did. Like, I earned it. So that's what anyone listening now has to do. They have to earn it, and they have to be prepared. I would say get therapy. Get a therapist, and try to find balance as best as you can. But when it comes to dreams, there really is no balance. It's kind of just 100% this thing constantly until you reach a peak. Because there is my biggest thing was like, okay, how many number ones can you have? How many this? How many that? Da da da. I was in this hamster wheel, and for so long, I had these goals and had these goals and had these goals, and then I had no more goals.
Right. You reached them all.
Yeah. Exactly. So like the only real thing that I haven't done yet is won a Grammy, but like who gives a And I realized that that's just a glorified pat on the back. So that's not even really a goal, to have a bunch of people in a committee who don't even really understand me or my music tell me, why it's worth something or not, or this or that. And that's not me saying that as like, well, you don't have a Grammy, like you sound salty. Like, no, this is me realizing like that doesn't matter. I'm not going to kill myself for years and years to try to get a Grammy. So with all that, balance, focus, and just
would there have been a ritual that you would have added in the last decade, knowing what you went through, knowing the ups and the loneliness, the darkness? Would there have been like, you know what, every week I'm going to talk to the therapist for my 20s, or every week I'm going to get 7 hours of sleep a night? Or would there have been anything you would have tried to shift that could have been like, you know what, I'm going to get off the internet for one day a week and just sit in nature? Like, what could you have done in an ideal world?
Yeah, you just said it. You said it all. Like that, all of that would have been amazing. But there's just no way you could have told this guy that, man.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no way. I'm going to get off the internet. If I'm off the internet for one day, that's followers. I'm in my head like followers that I'm not getting, or fans that aren't going to come to a city, or this or da 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 da. And in many ways, it's true. So that's why it's like you have to be willing. Like me, I wanted ultimate success. I wanted the biggest success you could have, and I got it. I did it. And the reason I did that is because I sacrificed everything to get it. Now, I don't think that's healthy, but once again, in retrospect, personally, I am glad I did it. But I also somehow, common sense and God, just like when I was a kid, made it out the other side of all of this and realized my self-worth and that I don't need to do this and all these other things. I did need to do that, not for self-worth, but to build a brand and a fan base around the world where I could tour for the rest of my life if I want and be financially okay. I had to do that. And now I'm just at a place where I'm like, okay, I could continue to do that. I could keep having $30 million years, or I could have a couple $1 million years.
Right. And enjoy your life.
Right. Yeah. And what is that? Like, it doesn't really change my quality of life. And you know what is even more important is I can do the thing my parents did, and I can spend time with my child, and I can be a good dad. And that's what's more important to me now. Yeah.
You grew up in a poor household, and my audience is really curious about optimizing their life in many different ways, their health, their mindset, their spirituality, their relationships, and financially. And you grew up in this poor household. What was your mindset around money growing up, and how did you shift your mindset at some point to really start building wealth, manifesting and attracting money, and also not blow it? You know, not just like spend it all and be like broke, 2 years later.
Wow. Okay. So I don't even remember ever seeing money in the household. I remember when food stamps weren't on a card, on an EBT card, and they were actual food stamps that looked like Monopoly money. I knew nothing of money. I knew no concept of saving it, what that meant. I mean, we had just enough to get by, like literally. That was
day
it.
by day. Yeah.
Yeah, for real. And it's like the first of the month, like that Bone Thug song, wake up, wake up, wake up. It's the first of the month. It's like, yeah, motherfucking food stamps. We eating chicken tonight. And then by the end of the month, it's powdered milk and chickens and like gross gizzards and shit. And so, yeah, for real. So, I never understood that. I never got that. I never knew any of what that meant. I think that the understanding fundamentally like how to use and utilize money and save money didn't come till I was 17 and I got 2 jobs. So I left home at 17. I got 2 jobs. I worked at a flower shop and I worked at Jiffy Lube, and I'm making like $7.50 an hour, dude. Like, so it's like you're not even. This is Maryland.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a suburb of DC, and there's
nothing. You can't save anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can't really save anything. So I'm enjoying like Kenny's Chinese chicken and like that. Like I'm enjoying it, you know, Starvin' Marvin subs and maybe an occasional video game or something like that. But for the most part, that was it. It wasn't until I really so I signed my deal with Def Jam in 2012, and I went from having like $12 in my bank account to $175,000 overnight.
Wow.
The first thing I did was I went to Taco Bell because that was like Ruth Chris of
those luxury.
And I was like, yeah. So I'm like, here we go. And I bought my homies, you know, some stuff. I got my producer some shit. I got my videographer a new camera. I hooked up my mom's my homie's mom's car that we used to drive all around because it was broken down. But besides that, I saved every dime that I had, and I put it into myself and in my craft. And then I moved to LA, and I was paying rent, and we were staying kind of in the hills, but it was like, yeah, it was an all right house. And I did all that, and then I went on tour, and I literally, like, it was just investing my money in myself. So I would pay for the merchandise. We'd haul it around in trash bags. We'd go to these shows. I'm selling these tickets. Things are going good. I'm making my money back, making a bit of a profit. And then I remember for the big tour, we needed a tour bus. And this was for my debut album, Under Pressure, in 2014. And by the time I fronted all the money, I only had $1,200 in my bank account.
Ooh.
So it's like, I'm this like, you know, I made it, my album's out, but there's always something else that you don't really realize. And that was crazy, but I made my money, and then I did good. And, you know, I remember getting my first $1 million check from a merchandise company, which was crazy.
Wow.
Because we were selling such merch and such good merch, and things were going well. And then even when I had that $30 million year, like, people were like, invest your money, make money for you. And it's not until now, you know, recently, that I've actually started, you know, investing certain things like crypto and whatever. And but I'm still like that poor kid that's like, no, mine.
Right.
Mine. Like, if it's in this account, it's not going anywhere. So like, no. But, you know, I'm at a place now where I want my money to make me money. So
yeah,
I think it's trial and error. And once again, God and common sense, something. Well, don't get me wrong, man. I've had some fun, man. I went to Vegas and blew $120,000.
Oh,
like I knew I was gonna lose it, and people were like, "You're crazy. You're just gonna you're gonna put $40,000 on red." And I'm like, "Yep." And then I made 80, and then I lost it, and then I'm back and forth. Because for me, as insane as it was, it's like this made up for every Christmas I didn't have, every birthday gift I didn't get. Like, I'm having a blast. I am paying $120,000 right now to have the best time in the world. Yes. And I don't do this all. It's not like I do this all the time. It was like I only ever did it the one time. You know, I bought a Bronco for $250,000. I bought a bunch of nerd you know, guitars, things like that. Yeah, for sure. But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, dude, like I did. I saved my money, and that's because I never got into it like just and O's and boats and like I wasn't like rap is is going to be this thing. I was like, no, I'm going to utilize it and realize that this is a business and spend my money where it should be.
For young artists, entrepreneur, athletes, anyone who's building their thing, whatever their thing is, what would you say are the 3 greatest investments they should be making, once they start making a little bit of money? More than day by day, but it's like, okay, I've got an extra $1,000 or $5,000 a month. That's a lot of money for younger people, but I've got some extra cash.
Yeah.
What should I invest in? Three things that they should be investing in, whether it's back in themselves, whether it's in their merch or their products or their, and hiring a coach, whatever it is, a trainer, a therapist. Like, what would you say are those 3 things they should be investing in at an earlier age?
I feel like if they're making pretty decent money, they're already investing in themselves. They're being smart enough to know that whatever their brand is or their sport or their career, like they are spending that money to make sure that they can do it well, whether they're in the gym and they're getting pre-workout powder and like all like, so they are already spending their money where it needs to be. It's funny because like I said, I'm the guy that was like mine. So I was just saving my money. So number 1, I would say like save your money, like for sure, but put it in a savings account that's going to at least,
make a little bit,
build, compound interest and all this other stuff. So that's number 1. Number 2, have fun. I didn't have fun. I didn't have fun at all. I wish I did. I wish I had a little more fun. Nothing crazy, but like that's one regret I do have is that I was so focused that I didn't really even just have dude, I would go on trips it'd be like, oh yeah, we're gonna go to Big Bear, man, and I'd be like, all right, I guess I'll go because it's like my best friend's birthday, so I'm like, okay, but like as soon as I get there, I got the laptop and the microphone set up and like I'm like still recording and working. Like I guess what I'm saying is for a day or a weekend or whatever that I would have at least just enjoyed those precious moments with like family, because they are my family. I don't really have family, so that was family, and it's like, oh man. But low key, it's like my best friend's my producer, so it's his birthday, and he's like, yeah, and he's making beats with me. he's just doing it drunker than usual,
right?
So it's like so that's another thing. And then third, I don't know, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no worries. What do you think are the biggest lies around success that you wish people understood more? Because you've accomplish pretty much every goal there is for yourself, made the money, all the, platinum, 10 times, all this stuff. What's the biggest lies around success you wish people understood more?
Well, one, it's all fleeting. So the biggest cliche, money doesn't make you happiness. Success can't make you happy. Like, it's just so true. But at the same time, it's a bit of a double-edged sword because we all want to feel worthy. We all want to feel accomplished. And you have to, like I want to be the best dad in the world, but as good of a father as I want to be, I still have my own dreams. And if I don't chase those dreams and follow those dreams, even very responsibly to make sure that I'm making time, like I'm not going to be happy. And if I'm not happy, I'm not going to be a good dad. So I would tell people, I mean, the biggest thing is like, just do it because you love it. Like if your goal or motivation is like money and success, you're not going to be happy. You'll be successful, but you won't necessarily be happy. So with music, my goal for sure, I was like, I do want to make a bunch of money. I do want to be really famous. I do want this, but none of that mattered when I was writing my raps. None of that mattered when I was making beats. When I was actually in the studio with my friends, all that mattered is that we were creating something genuine from our heart. We were having fun. We were making the music we liked and loved. So whether it's a sport you love to play, don't just be like, oh, I'm going to be the best running back. Or, I don't know about sports. I'm going to be honest. I watch anime. But whatever that is, it's like, cool, but like, do you love the game? Is it just something that your dad like drilled you to do and you're like one of the baller brothers or whatever, like do you love it? I mean, I'm not hating, maybe they love it, I don't know, but I'm just, it's like Joe Jackson, it's like, do you really actually love this thing? So make sure whatever it is, you enjoy it. And honestly, you could enjoy making money. Like, that's a real thing. You could be like, I'm going to start an investment company and I'm going to this, and like, it gets me excited and I'm going to make people their money and make money from their money. And that, like, for sure, like, you can do that. But just know at the end of the day, okay, you got that money. Now what? When somebody's like, hey, what do you like to do? And you're like, make money? Like, come on, get the out of here. Like, you're going to sit down at a date. Cool. Yeah. You got the bread. You can take her to the, him or her to the nice restaurant. And then, But then what, fool? Like, do you like golf? Like, what do you want to go drive go-karts? Like, life is so much more than just this thing.
You talk about rewriting your story from the past. And I believe that we hold on to our stories, and we probably continue to write them in a more powerful way that keeps us trapped or traumatized. Is that fair to say that something happens in our past, we hold on to the story daily or whenever we're triggered, and it's like amplifies the story in our mind?
Well, it does. And the problem is that often whatever that version of the story is, we carry with us and we never revise it. And so you create a story when you're younger, for example, about something that happened in your life. And then as an adult, you've never looked at that story through the adult lens. You're still looking at it through the childhood lens. And so that's why I say that when people come in, that we're all unreliable narrators.
Yes.
That we all tell a story through, this lens. And the thing is, these are usually faulty narratives. So there's a broader version of the story that people haven't looked at. And so I feel like in a lot of ways, what I do as a therapist is I act as an editor, and I have, of course, a writing background. And so I help people to revise their stories, because the reason they can't move forward in the story, the reason they can't get to the next chapter is because of something is wrong with the story. They are stuck. And so it's almost like I'm helping them with writer's block. I
mean, for me, life is an interpretation.
Yes.
Right? There's an instance that happens, and we can interpret it as good or bad, or we can interpret it as this is a neutral event, and I'm going to make the most of this. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And also how we attribute other people's parts of the story, right? So who are the villains and the heroes in the story? I talk in the book about the difference between idiot compassion and wise compassion. And idiot compassion is what our friends do. They back up our story. No matter what, we say, this happened. This happened with my boss. This happened with my partner. This happened with my parent, right? This happened with my best friend. And we say, yeah, that was terrible. Screw them. Yeah. They're a jerk. That's awful. You're right. They're wrong. Don't let anyone treat you that way. That's what we do. And if you listen to your friends' stories, you start to realize over time that even though the situation and the names might be different, the kind of story they're telling is similar. It's kind of like if a fight breaks out in every bar you're going to, maybe it's you.
Yeah, exactly.
But we don't say that. That's idiot compassion.
Idiot compassion is where we as friends say, yeah, you're the best person in the world. This person's horrible.
Yeah.
Leave them or let them go.
Yes.
Or forget about them. Like, they're so bad at what they did. There's always two sides to every story.
Well, right. And so the value of therapy is that we offer wise compassion. We hold up a mirror to you and help you to see yourself in a way that maybe you haven't been willing or able to do. And that's where the other version of the story comes in.
So how do we have wise compassion for our friends when they're like, she cheated on me, he left me, they had an affair, whatever.
Yeah.
How do we change our story and also show compassion that we're there for our friend, not making, when they're in a vulnerable place, not making the other person right or wrong, but being there for them and also kind of giving them some tough love, I guess?
I wouldn't call it tough love. I would just call it
reality.
Love.
Love.
It's love. It's much more loving to be truthful in a compassionate way. So I sometimes call them compassionate truth bombs because we need to hear them. But how do we do it? It has to do with timing and dosage. So the timing is when they're really raw, when something just happened. Now's not the time to say, this has happened with your last 3 boyfriends, right?
Maybe you're the problem here.
Yeah. Have you noticed that going through people's phones is not working well for you?
Wow.
We are not going to say that maybe in that moment. So that's the timing. And then the dosage is how much are you going to say in a particular moment and in a particular conversation. It doesn't all have to happen in one conversation. So I think that has to do with being a good listener. And a lot of us don't know how to listen. And I think it's really helpful. I see a lot of couples in my practice too. And if you can say to the person when they come to you with something, how can I be helpful in this conversation right now? I know you're really hurting. Do you want to just vent? Do you want a hug? Do you want me to help problem solve with you? Do you want my honest opinion, or do you want me to hold off and we can have that conversation another time? Let them tell you what they want so you can give them something that is helpful to them in that moment. And then in another conversation, you might be able to offer them something more. When they're not completely raw or broken. Yes. And hurt. Yes. So what is that specific question when anyone's coming to you with a challenge or a complaint or hurt? What's the question you should ask them? How can I be helpful to you right now? I know you're really hurting. What does that do for the
person who's hurting when they hear that?
It helps them to reflect on, oh, wait, what do I need? Right? Am I just going to download all of this stuff and then I'm not going to feel any different at the end? Or is there something else that I want right now? And maybe downloading it will make them feel different, just make them feel seen and understood and heard, which is important. Or maybe they want something else, but let them tell you. Yeah. And I think the other thing is these 3 words that are really helpful when they're talking to you are tell me more. So instead of saying, you know, when they say like, oh, here's what's going on, and we say, oh, well, we try to cheer them up. Like, you know, here's what you can do. We try to fix it. We try to cheer them up. We try to make it seem like it's not so bad, whatever we do. Instead, just say, tell me more. We do this with our kids. I can say as a parent, we do this all the time, right? So your kid comes to you and says, you know, I'm really sad about this, or I'm really worried about this. And we say, oh, don't worry. No, it's not a problem. Or we say, oh, don't be sad, right? Go have ice cream. Right, exactly. But the thing is that then you get the message as a kid that like, oh, wait, I'm not supposed to feel this. And really what it is we get uncomfortable as parents with our kids' feelings.
Why is that?
Because we are uncomfortable with feelings. We grew up in a way where feelings were messy, feelings were uncomfortable, feelings were something that, you know, they were going to be trouble. Yeah. As opposed to
stop crying as a kid.
Yes, as opposed to just, you know, feelings are actually a great thing. People say, oh, there are these negative feelings like sadness, anxiety, anger, whatever, even envy. I always say feelings are like a compass. They tell us what direction to go in. So with envy, for example, I say, follow your envy. It tells you what you want. If you are feeling envy, that's great because it says, what do I desire? It puts you in touch with your desire. What is it that I desire? And what steps can I take to get something like that in my own life? If you're feeling sad, if you're feeling anxious, what is not working right now that you can look at? If you stuff down that feeling, if you pretend it's not there, it just gets bigger. And here's what happens. It doesn't go away. It comes out in too much food, alcohol, drugs, insomnia, a short-temperedness, inability to function, distractibility, that mindless scrolling we all do through the internet. A colleague of mine said that the internet was like the most effective short-term non-prescription painkiller out there. Wow. Right? And so what happens is your feelings are still there, but you're not dealing with them.
What happens when we never deal with our emotions or feelings?
Well, you, first of all, get sick. And
physically sick, emotionally sick, mentally.
Everything, right? So we have, just like we have a physical immune system, we have a psychological immune system. And we have to take care of our psychological immune system. So it's just like, you know, what do you do to keep healthy with your body? Like you're going to eat right, you're going to exercise, you know, you're going to do all the things that you want to do to take care of yourself. You're going to get enough sleep. Those things also help your psychological immune system. They're not totally separate. The mind-body connection is profound. But at the same time, you know, are you going to be around people who don't nourish you? That's going to hurt your psychological immune system. That's going to make you sick. Are you going to stuff down your feelings? That's going to make you sick. And so how do we take care of ourselves? And part of it is, instead of trying to numb out your feelings, because numbness isn't the absence of feelings. Numbness is a state of being overwhelmed by too many feelings.
Wow.
And then not only do you not experience the feelings that you don't want to experience, but you don't experience the other feelings. You mute one feeling, you mute the others. You mute the pain, you mute the joy. So you're living in this state where you don't actually get to feel the range of feelings that make us human.
What is that state called?
I would say sick. I was going to say dead. I mean, I feel like you can be alive, but not living. And that's what happens to people, is that they're alive, they're going through the motions, they wake up every day, but they're not really living their lives.
What's an assessment we could take for ourselves if someone's listening or watching to ask themselves how alive or how dead they are, and if the people in their life closest are actually good for them or are hurting their psychological states?
Right.
Is there a questionnaire we could take, like just off the cuff? Is there an assessment? Is there a few things we could ask ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it has to do with a sense of vitality, right? Which, of course, like vitality, the word like life is right in there. When you wake up in the morning, are you excited about what you're doing? Is there meaning in what you're doing? Do you feel connected to how you're spending your days? Because at the end of your life, are you going to look back and say, what did I do that was meaningful? in maybe you should talk to someone. In my book, there's a woman that I treat. She's this young woman who goes on her honeymoon. She's newly married. She comes back and she has cancer. And she says to me at one point, she says, why do we need a terminal diagnosis?
Yeah. To have a wake-up call.
Right. Why do we need a terminal diagnosis to live our lives with intention? Why do we need that to really pay attention? And I think that if we can keep the awareness of death sitting on one shoulder, and I don't mean in a morbid way or in a creepy way, it's not depressing. It's actually, again, going back to vitality, it helps us feel alive because life has 100% mortality rate, and that's not for other people. We like to believe that, right? And so the thing is that if we know that we have a limited time here, I think we would pay more attention to what we're actually doing every day.
Why is it so hard for people to pay attention?
Fear.
But they're like, they feel like they're stuck sometimes for years, right? It's like I stay stuck in a relationship I know it's not right for me for years. I stay in a depressed state for years. I stay in a job that I hate for years. It's all based on fear.
Well, I think it is fear. I think it's fear of uncertainty. This is going to sound strange, but change is really hard because we cling to something that's familiar to us. So even though we may know, oh, this would help me, this would be a good change for me, we don't do it because it's unfamiliar. And so if you grew up with a lot of chaos, if you grew up feeling sad all the time or anxious all the time, that feels like home to you, even if it's unpleasant or even miserable. And
she'll keep finding chaotic environments.
You keep recreating it. Yeah. And so, it was funny because my own therapist gave me this great analogy. He said to me, you remind me of this cartoon, and it's of a prisoner shaking the bars, desperately trying to get out. But on the right and the left, it's open, right? No bars. So basically, the prisoner is not in jail. And that's what so many of us are like. We feel like we're trapped. We're not in jail. We can change. We can just walk around the bars. But why don't we? Because with freedom, the freedom to walk around the bars, comes responsibility. And if we're responsible for our own lives, that scares us. We feel like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I'm competent enough to do that. Or now I'm to blame if things don't go right. I can't blame it on everything else.
Is this one of the reasons why inmates after a long time being in prison who get out go back into prison because they feel like they need to be back in that environment? Or are there other reasons? Maybe?
I think there are other reasons. I think we don't give people the support when they come out. The mental health issues that they needed to be treated for were never, they never got that support. And then they come out and they're back in the same situation where they don't have that community support.
Why is it so hard for us to take responsibility for our own happiness?
I think that if you grew up in a household where you were seen and heard and understood, those are the people who do take responsibility for their own happiness. I think for people who felt like they were ripped off in their childhoods, there's a part of them that's still in a fight. There's a part of them that still wants that redo. And so it's kind of like they're not aware of this, but what they're saying is basically, I will not change mom and dad until you give me the things that I did not get in childhood. So
they'll go find a partner that emulates their environment from mom and dad and try to change them so they...
Well, right. This is the irony of relationship, right? For those people who have not sort of worked through it. This is so common. And I think all of us have this piece in us, right? Because nobody had a perfect childhood. So what happens is people say, okay, when I'm an adult, I'm going to pick a partner who really makes me feel nourished, who really gives me all those things that I did not get growing up. But what they don't realize is unconsciously, they have this radar for the people who look very different from their parents on the surface. But then once they get into that relationship, it's kind of like, uh-oh, this feels familiar, right? And so what they did was their unconscious said when they were picking their partner, hey, you look familiar, come closer. Even though unconsciously, they thought, oh, you're totally different from my parents. This is going to work out great. But no, they have radar for that if they haven't worked out the stuff that's sort of their unfinished business. There's this saying, we marry our unfinished business. Ooh. We actually do marry our unfinished business. So that is why it is so important as an adult to take responsibility and say, you know what, I am going to have to grieve this loss of what I didn't get. And I'm going to have to work through this and assess where I am as an adult so that I pick people and surround myself with people who are healthy for me.
What if you've chosen someone that you love deeply, but it's unconsciously your unfinished business? Is that the wrong person for you once you realize, oh, they're never going to change? Or is that a point for us to reflect back and say, actually, I need to heal the past, accept this person for who they are, and be willing to flow within this relationship?
Well, what happens is, so you married your unfinished business, but so did they. And so if you can both recognize that, if you realize, hey, wait, we have a lot of conflict in our relationship, or we're really avoidant in our relationship, or we don't feel connected in the way we want to feel connected, that's a great opportunity for both of you to work out your unfinished business.
To heal together.
To heal together, right.
And so that relationship could thrive
if you both are willing to look in the mirror at yourselves and do the work. Yes, that could be a really beautiful relationship. And it could be very healing for both of you, in fact.
It could potentially be the strongest bond ever if you both were able to go through that.
Yeah.
But if you're unwilling to go through that, then what? You're going to be in
both people
pain.
Well, both people have to be willing. I mean, that's the thing. So it's like you may wake up one day and say, oh, wait a minute, I have all this unfinished business. And then your partner says, yeah, it's all you. You're the problem in the relationship. You know, it's kind of like in couples therapy. So often I'll see something like someone will say like, you never listen to me. And I will say, how well do you listen to them?
Right.
Right. It's always like,
if you're just yelling at someone all day, are they going to want to listen to you?
Right. Right. So, you know, there's this dance that we do in relationship. And what happens is people are doing these dance steps. And people become very ingrained. It's like, oh, here we go. You can script out people's arguments. You know exactly what they're going to look like.
It starts with one thing, and then it goes back into many different things. You're like, oh,
and you know exactly how it's going to go, and who's going to feel what, and who's going to accuse the other person of what. And that's the dance. And so if one person changes their dance steps, the other person either is going to fall flat on the dance floor, or they're going to have to change their steps too if they want to keep dancing. And usually, so we always say you can't change another person, but you can influence another person.
How?
By changing your dance steps. So for example, we like to say insight is the booby prize of therapy, meaning people will come and they'll be like, oh, now I understand why I keep getting into that argument with my partner. And so then they go home and they come back the next week and I'll say, well, did you do something different when you got in that argument? Well, no, but I understand why I did.
Right.
So you have to be both vulnerable and accountable when you come to therapy.
How do we fight better? When we are in constant repeat pattern every month or every week, it becomes an argument around something for whatever reason. And it's a pattern. And couples start to notice it. How does one person or both people recognize and say, okay, I'm going to change my dance steps and I'm going to fight or dance better?
Yeah. The first thing is to notice sort of what do you own in this? What is your reaction? So we have a choice every time someone presents us with something. There's a great quote in the book, it's a Viktor Frankl quote, where he says, between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom to choose.
Between stimulus and response, so between an action happening and your response to the action.
So your partner says something.
There's a window of opportunity.
Yes, there's that space. Usually that space for us will look like a breath. The breath is everything. The breath, really, like
if
you need
don't
that breath.
breathe, you're screwed.
If you need to take the breath, or you will just respond. It's sort of like we have these neural pathways that are wired, right? And someone says something, and you react not just to what that person in front of you is saying, but it goes back to something that reminds you of something from a long time ago. People who aren't even in the room are in that moment with you. And so that's that neural pathway. And so what you need to do is you need to take a breath. It's like a big stop sign on that road that's your neural pathway.
Yeah.
So hold up the stop sign. You can even picture a stop sign in your mind. Stop, breathe. Now you get to choose. How do I want to respond to this? Do I want to respond in the way I've responded the last gazillion times, which has not worked out well? Or do I want to try something different? So that's part one. Part two is perspective taking. A lot of people who are in really highly conflictual relationships have trouble with perspective taking. They can't imagine that the other person has a valid perspective. Now, you might not agree with every piece of how they view this, but there's some overlap between how this person views it and how you view it, but you are not willing to see that. And so I have this new podcast called Dear Therapist, and on the podcast, so much of what we do is we help people to take the perspective of the other person. There's something that you are not seeing right now.
Why is that so hard for people to see someone else's perspective?
Well, two things. One is because, that unreliable narrator thing that we think that we are right. And we don't want to be told. And so what we hear when we say there's another perspective, we're not saying you're wrong. We're saying there's more to the story. So there's a difference between their perspective is valid as well, is not saying your version is wrong. We're saying there's more. So people hear it, though, as you are wrong. And the other part of it is that there's a lot of shame, that people are sticking to a certain story because if they allow that other part of the story to come in, the part that they're responsible for will probably come up, and they feel a lot of shame. So when I see individuals in therapy, they come in and they tell me a story and they leave out the parts that they are embarrassed about, the parts that they feel like that was not my finest moment.
Like what? Give me an example. Like, well, I screamed back, or I did this. Or,
like, here's what happened, or here's this is the situation, and my partner did this, or my mother did this, or my child did this, or my boss did this, whatever. And they don't tell you these other details, and they sort of trickle out later on.
Yeah.
And they're very relevant to the story.
Right.
But that's shame, right? And so, that's why the therapeutic relationship is so important, because you get to a point where you really trust the therapist and you're able to be really honest about what happened.
How much does shame shape our stories?
Oh, so much. I think that, as humans, we want to belong. And what shame is about is, I'm not going to belong. I'm not going to be loved. The greatest human need is, how can we love and be loved? And when you feel like there's something I did that people will look upon badly, they might not like me if I tell them this. That's just, wired into us.
It's like the ego death to us. It's like the emotional death. If someone knew this about us, they would not love me, and I would emotionally die.
And I will be alone.
I'll be alone, yeah.
Yeah, and we need other people.
I felt like this way for many years, where I opened up about sexual abuse about 7 years ago, and for 25 years, no one knew because I was so ashamed. And I felt like if anyone knew, how could they possibly love me?
Yeah.
Or accept me? Or how would anyone want to date me? Or my family, how would they not disown me? These were the stories that I was writing. I was a bad editor.
Yeah.
How does someone who's done something that they're not proud of in the past, who's had something done to them that they're not proud of, whatever, they've been in a situation that they feel shame around, how does someone start to process that shame to heal so that it doesn't continue to run their life and keep them imprisoned?
Yeah. Well, I think they do what you did, which is you started talking about it. And I think you have to choose your audience, which is really important, especially as you're just starting out. So you want to make sure that
Don't tell your abuser who's the toxic relationship.
Well, I think you have to really choose someone who's safe. And if you don't have those people, I think a therapist is a really good place to start. But I do think that it's harder for men to talk about anything, whether it's sexual abuse or even, just sort of like anything they feel vulnerable about. And so men will come into my office and they will say to me at some point, I've never told anyone this before. And then...
Do women say that?
Yes. So here's the thing. Women will say that. They'll say, I've never told anyone this before, except for my mother, my sister, and my best friend, right?
You're the only one who I don't know.
You're the only one, right?
Well, I haven't told this
I told my book club, I told, whatever it is. They've told like a few people, but they feel like, because women, it's acceptable for women to talk about these things. And so they feel like they haven't told anyone because they still feel like there's some degree of privacy around it. Men literally have told no one. And they might, even if they have like a great partner and they have close friends, they have a great family, whatever it is, they feel like I cannot tell anyone because vulnerability for men in our culture is not okay. Even though we say that, so this is
even
funny.
Though women say, I wish he would open up, I wish he'd be emotional, I wish he would cry and be more sensitive, but then when they are, they're like, I need you to be strong right now.
Right, so this is exactly what happens in couples therapy. So I'll have two people sitting on the couch and I have a couple, and say it's a heterosexual couple, and the woman says to the man, like, I really want to get to know you. I feel like we would connect so much more if you would just open up to me. I want to know what's going on inside there, right? And he does. And let's say he tears up. Let's say he actually starts crying in a way where like his body is convulsing, right? She looks at me like deer in headlights. She's so profoundly uncomfortable.
Gosh.
And yet this is the thing that she was asking for. So what she'll say is, I don't feel safe when you don't open up to me. And I don't feel safe when you're vulnerable with me. Like it's like Goldilocks. It's like not too much, not too little, but right in the middle. That's how vulnerable you can be with me.
I've been saying this for a long time, that I feel like this is one of the main things that hurts all intimate relationships.
Yes.
When a person doesn't feel safe to share their emotions to the person that says they love them the most, and actually makes them wrong for it, or makes them less than, or retracts their love when they're vulnerable. So I don't know the solution for this, besides saying this all the time, and besides saying, ladies, like, if you want a vulnerable man who's emotional, you have to accept him when he's emotional.
Well, not just accept, but embrace.
I didn't know who I was for a very long time. And still I'm trying to learn who I am.
Yeah, me too.
You are?
Yeah.
But you seem like you have it all figured out.
Oh, God. No, I don't. No, I don't have it. I mean, first of all, I think the one thing I've learned in my research above all else is that in the absence of love and belonging, there's always suffering. So when I hear about your experiences growing up, that's suffering.
Yeah.
You know, that's real suffering. And for me, not making the drill team when I was, I think it was in 8th grade, by itself is not a lot, but how my family responded to it. It was like when things changed for me and I didn't feel like I belonged to my family anymore. So I think that I still am trying to figure it out. I don't know that I've interviewed anyone, even spiritual leaders, who have the belonging thing completely nailed, because I don't think it is what we think it is. You know, I don't think that it's having a big posse of friends or having a crew or rolling with a bunch of people. I think I'm still trying to figure it out, because I still feel lonely and alone and on the outside of things on a really regular basis.
Really? I mean, you're going on a book tour with thousands of people, 15-city tour, millions of fans around the world, and you still feel alone.
Yeah, I can feel really lonely.
Why?
And it's really hard because, you know, you talk about that book tour. I'm severely introverted.
Yes.
Super private. And so I love that connection between me and an audience, but it can also be hard on me. And also, I'm talking about things that no one, it's weird to me that people sign up to talk about them, but they're hard topics sometimes. And we laugh and we have fun and we'll sing. But I think what I've learned in doing the research on belonging is that belonging is being a part of something bigger than yourself, but it's also the courage to stand alone and to belong to yourself above all else. And so I think I spend a lot of time belonging to myself, and sometimes that makes other people uncomfortable. And so I think that's hard. I think I do feel, I'm always looking for, I don't know about you, but I'm always looking for the roadmap. Like, I want to find the researcher, storyteller, Christian, lover of all people, fighter of the resistance. I want to find the blueprint of who's ahead of me believing what I believe in and doing it really well. But there's not really a blueprint sometimes. From, you know, like
we're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
We're all trying to figure it out.
I don't get to copy anybody. And so it's hard.
Yeah.
It's still hard. But here's a thing that has changed everything for me. I belong to me. So even when I feel alone and I wonder, like, who's my crew and who are my people, I belong to me for sure, for the first time in my life, maybe.
Yeah, and I think we lose ourselves sometimes by trying to belong in groups that we don't fit in.
Yeah.
You know, I remember being in, you know, the youngest on these sports teams growing up. I was playing on the junior varsity as a freshman, or the varsity or whatever. So I was the youngest, and I remember just wanting to fit in, just like you did in the that team. And I wanted to fit in. I wanted to feel like they liked me, like I mattered, like I was the cool kid or whatever. And when they would do things that I didn't really agree with, or they would bully other kids or make fun of people, it's like I didn't want to not say anything. You know, I didn't want to stand against them because I wanted to belong.
Yeah.
So if I did stand up against them, then that means I was alone. And that was my biggest fear, was being alone.
No, yeah, because that's what teams and groups deliver. They deliver this thing that you're not alone.
Yeah.
The problem is I was so shocked to learn in the research that the opposite of belonging is fitting in. Because fitting in is assessing a group of people and thinking, who do I need to be? What do I need to say? What do I need to wear? How do I need to act? And changing who you are. And true belonging never asks us to change who we are. It demands that we be who we are. Because if we fit in because how we've changed ourselves, that's not belonging. That's not belonging, because you betrayed yourself for other people. And that's not sustainable.
Yeah, you start to lose yourself.
You start to lose yourself, exactly what you said. And so I think it's hard. You have to show up as who you are.
How do we find out who we are?
That's the life's work, right? That's freaking hard.
Do you know who you are?
Yeah, I do.
Who are you?
In what way?
If someone just said, who are you, Brene, what would you say?
Brene Brown. Mom, partner, researcher, storyteller, Texan. I don't know, I'd ask them how much time they have. Because, the thing is that we want to, when we ask people who they are and we want to know, we'd like those really easy files to put them in.
Of course.
But I'm a complicated person.
Are you?
Yeah, and so I think I know who I am.
What makes you complicated?
I don't know if I'm complicated, but I'm complex.
You're interesting.
I hope so.
Very interesting.
Some days yes, some days no.
Very interesting.
I think what makes me complex is, I think what makes everyone complex is the paradoxical nature of people. So, I speak in public, I love doing that, but I'm incredibly introverted.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a traditionalist around things.
Yeah.
My kids say yes ma'am, no ma'am, but I also raise them to challenge authority every time they get the opportunity to do that. But to be really polite when they're doing it.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think I'm unapologetically earnest. Like, I believe in the goodness of people, but I believe it's hard work to stay out of fear and stay good.
Yeah.
And so I think I understand people. I think I have a lot of empathy, but I'm also not afraid of discomfort.
Yeah.
So I think there's just a lot of push and pull.
Sure.
And I think that's true of all of us. I do not like to be defined.
I think that's.
Do you?
I was going to say, I feel like my entire life, I didn't want to be defined as well. They were like, you're going to be this jock in college,
Right.
You're going to be like this alcoholic, You're going to be in the frats.
Yeah.
All my siblings said this to me, and I was like, no, I'm not. I made a bet with each one of my siblings, $100 each, that I wouldn't have one sip of alcohol in college. Because I was like, I'm going to go against everything you think I'm going to be.
Yeah.
I joined the school musical because they were like, you're just going to do sports. I sang, I played guitar, I salsa dance. I was like, I'm going to do everything different than what people would expect of a tall white man, right?
That's awesome.
I was like, I want to be different.
Yeah.
And I think in that process, I was like trying to discover who I really was, what I liked, my dreams, what was fun for me.
Yeah.
As opposed to just trying to fit the box and the mold of everyone
Right.
else. Because you can lose yourself in that fitting in, I think.
You can lose yourself in the fitting in, and you can lose yourself in the rebuttal to the fitting in.
It's true. Trying to go against it all too, yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, it's this thing that, it's a quote that is, Braving the Wilderness is all about this, starts with this quote from Maya Angelou, that we're never free until we belong nowhere. We belong everywhere, which is nowhere, which is no place at all, which I thought was a terrible quote for many years. And I was like, why are you saying that, Dr. Angelou? You're pissing me off.
Yeah.
But then I realized, really, and she says, the cost is high, but the reward is great. And I think that's the thing, that I feel like I belong everywhere I go, no matter where it is or who I'm with, as long as I never betray myself. And the minute I become who you want me to be in order to fit in and make sure people like me, is the moment I no longer belong anywhere. And that is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hard practice. That's an everyday practice.
Wow.
Yeah, because I can be whoever you want me to be, like that.
You're like a chameleon, you said.
Oh, I can be totally like a chameleon. Like, sometimes it's really funny because, like, because I travel so much, I have all these miles, I always sit in business class, and I'm normally the only woman in business class. Every now and then there's one other maybe, which is a conversation we should be having too.
Sure.
But it doesn't matter what dude sits next to me. Like, I can talk about whatever that person, like, And it's so funny because we'll talk about sports usually first, or football, or we'll talk about politics, and he'll say, what do you do? And I'll say, I study vulnerability and shame. Oh, well, I'm going to play some Angry Birds, and right that moment, like, I could just, and it's not that I know everything about everything, it's just.
So you're saying most men don't want to chime in and learn more about that?
No, that's usually, if I want to go to sleep, I'm like, I'm a shame researcher. What do you do? And he's like, okay.
Right.
But I think I can be anything. Like,
Yeah, you're adaptable.
I'm adaptable, and adaptable is great because anyone that comes to my home or here to work, I can make you feel comfortable.
Of course.
But then if I get so adaptable that my goal, my intention of adapting is to make sure you like me, then that's when I betray myself.
Yeah. When would you say is the time in your life you've been the most alone?
High school.
It's the whole journey.
Yeah, it just sucked.
It does suck.
It does. And my daughter just graduated from high school, and she had this amazing experience. Just incredible experience, and it was so healing to watch.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and I think it happened because she had the confidence to put herself out there, and student council president, and that kind. I think because we have a rule at our house that no matter what, you belong here. No matter how goofy, awkward, afraid, wrong, it doesn't matter. You belong here. And so I think when we give our kids a platform like that at home, it gives them the courage to take risks outside of home. Does that make sense?
Because they feel safe coming back. No matter what happens, they always have a place to come home to.
Yeah, and I grew up in a house where it was very chaotic. I'm the oldest of 4. And fitting in and being cool was the most important thing. So I think without that pressure, I probably would have never tried out for that drill team. But in my world growing up, you only did 2 things. You were a cheerleader or you were on the drill team, and preferably you married a running back or a quarterback. I mean, that was the way it went. And so for me, I probably would have been like president of the French club, or I would have been in debate or those kind of things.
Newspaper.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, photographer of the yearbook.
Yeah.
But those things did not have a lot of value.
Really?
No.
Your parents didn't instill that as something credible or worthwhile?
No, it's just cool was the number one value at home. Cool, lots of friends, popular.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't I wasn't that thing. I wasn't. And so what I did is I just started drinking, smoking weed, hanging out with, I found a place to be, cool. And, that just goes bad fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a conversation with your parents about this?
Oh, yeah, we've talked about all of it.
You have?
Yeah.
You've let it go, you've processed it all? Or...
Oh, yeah, because they read my books as I write them, and they're, they're like, shit, this is exactly what every parent wants, a child who grows up to be a shame researcher. But no, that's the miracle of my parents. Like my parents, they've taught me the best thing about parenting that anyone I think could ever know, which is it doesn't end when your kids leave. Like they keep growing and exploring and learn, and however hard it was for me not being able to be we did not do vulnerability growing up.
Really?
No. Like our family motto was literally lock and load. Like get ready, family trips, you're in the car for 5 hours, that's all 6 of us, you really have to go to the bathroom, but the rest stop is on the other side of the highway, we're not pulling over. Like suck it up, hold it. Like we were tough. Like we'd fall down and get hurt. My dad would say like, I got bigger scratches than that on my eyeball. Like we were tough. And so, and we were taught to outrun vulnerability. We were taught to suck it up, soldier on, get her done.
Yeah.
And so, however hard that was for me growing up, imagine what it was like for my parents in the 50s. My dad, who was the youngest of 6, his dad died when he was 16,
Was he able to process that or no?
No, he just did the next thing you do.
Right.
Played football, played college ball.
Yeah.
My mom, who's my grandmother, who I named my daughter after, was an alcoholic. And she was drunk every other day of my mom's life.
Wow.
But she was the most amazing person in the world. but everyone knew she was an alcoholic, so my mom wasn't allowed to have friends at her house growing up because it was the 50s and she was divorced. You know, and so my mom became the head of the drill team and the valedictorian, and so however hard it was for me growing up, having to try to outrun vulnerability, it was a million times harder on my parents.
Yeah.
And they did what they knew how to do, and they loved us as much as they could love us with the tools they had. And so I think the hard part comes from people that I've interviewed my whole life where the parents don't grow and change. And they see anything a child trying to do differently as criticism of what they did, as opposed to my parents who lean in and say, tell me more about that. I have a funny story. We hear a funny story about my dad? Yeah, it's great. So we do a lot of choice theory with my daughter and my son. And so my husband's a pediatrician.
Okay.
So like, we know a lot about child development from school.
Right.
And so when Ellen was little, we used to do this thing where we would say, you have two choices. Like, Lewis, you have two choices. You can either hand me the water, I'm gonna have to take it from you. What is your choice? So that if you decide not to hand it to me and I have to take it, it's not my fault. That was your choice, right? Yeah. And so one night I was talking to Ellen and we were at my dad's house in San Antonio and I was like, Ellie, you need to turn off Dora the Explorer. It's time to go to bed. And she's like, mm-mm. And I said, Ellen, you have two choices. You can get up and turn off the TV, or I'm going to get up and turn it off for you. And if I have to get up and turn off the TV, you're going to lose privileges to watch it tomorrow.
And that's your choice.
Yeah, that's your choice. So and I would hate that for you, but that will be your choice. And my dad was sitting in the recliner next to me, and he's like, damn, sis, what are you raising, a hostage negotiator? And I was like, Dad, and he's like, seriously, Brene? We had 4 of y'all, we didn't have time for that.
Yeah.
So the next day I come home, I'm visiting friends in San Antonio, and he's watching Ellen, and he's in the driveway, it's like 110 degrees in San Antonio, and he's sweating. He's like, Ellen, you have two choices. You can either put the bicycle up, or I'm gonna have to put it up for you. And the second one's a dumbass choice. So I was like, wow, you're so close.
You're getting there.
You're getting there. But
you're getting there.
My parents are amazing in that way that like, they're learning and changing. So I think it's harder when parents say, I'm done. What you got was what you got. Mm-hmm. No apologies, no change, no amends, take it or leave it. Yeah. And if you do it differently with your own kids, you're a sucker.
Wow.
And I think we see that a lot.
Yeah, we do. I mean, what should parents be learning about how they can grow? I mean, how can they start to be aware? Because I think it starts with being aware
for sure.
of what they know and what they don't know, and being receptive to learning something different, which is really hard to do. I think once you've had these habits for so long. So that's the first thing. And I want to dive into the lack of vulnerability with what's happening in Charlottesville right now as well, because I know you did something on that this morning. So I guess how can parents listen to this and be aware and be willing to move forward in a different way of learning something new when they're so stuck in their ways, potentially, that it's worked for them to this point to get to where they're at?
I believe this with my whole heart. I believe that 99.9% of parents are truly waking up every day and doing the very best they can with what they have.
Yeah.
I don't think there are a lot of parents who wake up and maliciously try to screw up their kids or hurt their kids or belittle or shame their kids. I think we're doing the best we can with what we have. And so I think to let go of the idea that if I have done something that I could have done better or that I could learn from, that I have to just come down. People defend their parenting like they're defending their lives because it's such a shame minefield.
Yeah.
I mean, a great example is the work you're doing around men and vulnerability. Mm-hmm. I cannot tell you the number of fathers and the hundreds, if not thousands of fathers I've interviewed that said, I shamed my son every time he was vulnerable.
Yeah.
I put him down, I made fun of them, I hit him every time he was vulnerable. And now I look back and I know it's because that's the way I was raised, or I was afraid he'd be soft and get hurt at school, or whatever the thing is. And so I think for parents, it's about understanding, giving yourself permission to not have been, I'm not perfect. I've never not been a researcher and a parent. My husband's a pediatrician. Our kids will be in therapy.
You're right.
And the reason why I think that'll be so successful is there's only two kind of kids you raise. Kids who will ask for help when they need it, or kids who won't. And that's as good as it gets, is to raise a kid who'll ask for help.
Yeah, I never asked for help.
Yeah.
I was always suffering inside.
Yeah, right.
And I always felt shameful, guilty,
Right.
and my way of asking was being angry, resentful, mad, hitting people in sports or outside of sports, because that's all I knew.
I'll tell you a story about a guy that I interviewed. One of the first men I interviewed when I went from interviewing all women to men was a guy who I said, "What is shame for you?" And he used the PUSSY word, which is like just synonymous with shame in male culture, right?
Yeah.
And he said, "I'll never forget the day that changed my life." He said, "I was at football practice. I was a freshman in high school." And he said, the coach yelled, "Get on the line." And I didn't want to get on the line of scrimmage, in case people don't know. I know you know, but he asked me to make sure I walked through all the sports metaphors with him now.
Exactly.
And he said, I was afraid to get on the line because I know, it's where people crash into each other. And so I must have had fear on my face because my coach looked at me and said, "Don't be a PUSSY, get on the line." And he said, that's the day that I learned that the way you deal with that is you change that fear into rage.
What would you say are some deciding factors that can help someone with their self-esteem? Because you and I are very similar, where my childhood, I didn't have much confidence in myself or esteem because I was in the bottom of my class in school, because I was, had tutors and special needs classes, because I just wasn't able to understand it and comprehend that well and felt awkward and goofy in my life. What are some things you think people that in their teens or even in their 40s and 50s who don't have confidence yet, what are the things we can be doing differently to gain confidence, to build self-esteem? Because I think this is one of the key factors of success is believing in yourself. It doesn't matter if the world believes in you if you don't believe in you.
Yeah.
What can we start to do to change that?
Well, I think a person has to start to study themselves. Most people know very little about themselves. They think they're their body. You're not a body. You have a body, and you have a marvelous mind. And when I first started to study this, I thought, studying the mind, that's for psychiatrists, psychologists, behavioral scientists. And the man that told me, he said, "No, it's not." He says, "That's for anybody. That's for little kids." And so I think as we start to understand something about our mind and something about our higher faculties, see, we're all programmed to live through our senses. We go by what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch. Well, I've got a little dog at home that can see, hear, smell, taste, touch. All the animals in the world, they're completely at home in their environment. They blend in. They operate by instinct, which is perfect. We had instinct removed, and we had higher faculties put in their place. And if we would study these and gain an understanding, your self-image would automatically start to improve. You have perception, the will, reason, imagination, memory, and intuition. Those 6 faculties will give you the ability to create your own environment. See, we're totally disoriented in our environment, where all the other little creatures are completely at home in theirs. And we're disoriented in ours because we can create our own, but we don't know that. School doesn't teach us that. School is more interested in the development of your intellect than in the development of awareness. Like, a person doesn't earn $100,000 a year because they want $100 a year. They earn $100 a year because they're not aware of how to earn $100 a month. Awareness is really the key. And when we become aware of who we are and what we've got working for us, marvelous things start to happen to us. And that's really what happened to me. I never went back to school. I built a very successful company. It operates all over the world. I didn't do it myself. I have a tremendous team of people. I've got just an absolute genius of a business partner, a woman who's an attorney. I mentioned to you before, you should have her on sometime. You'd be fascinated with her. She's that interesting. But it was a group of people. We've attracted a phenomenal group of people in our company. And we're operating now in 91 countries.
Wow.
teaching this information. I don't know another company that teaches what we teach. Like, I think Tony Robbins has probably done more for our industry than any individual. The Secret has probably done more for it, as much as Tony has, the movie. But I don't know anybody else teaching what we're teaching. And what we're really doing is teaching people how their mind functions and how to expand their understanding of how it operates.
What are the 6 faculties again? You shared this before, which I love, and I think if people really understood this,
perception,
it could help them build their self-image.
There's perception, the will, imagination, memory, reason, and intuition.
Which one is the hardest for people to?
I don't think any of them are
awareness.
They're all equally valuable. You take your imagination. Think of this for a minute, Louis. Nothing is created or destroyed. Look here. Here's a little cell phone. What you can do with this almost blows your mind when you think of it.
Yeah.
Well, when I was a kid, we didn't have a phone. We didn't have a phone because we didn't have any money, for the first reason. But the second, not everybody could have a phone. We were not aware that there was an infinite number of frequencies. Today, there's, a zillion phones, because there's an infinite number of frequencies. This phone is on its own frequency. Yours, it's on its own frequency. If I have your number in here and I hit send, you and I connect, we're on the same frequency. It won't matter where you are. We can see each other, we can communicate because we get on the same frequency. Well, the good that we desire is already here. It's on a frequency. The way to build this has always been here. We weren't aware of it. But somebody took their imagination and went off into no place. What they were really doing is going on to a higher frequency. And if you'll stay on that frequency, you'll attract everything that you require. That's why Dr. Wernher von Braun, when President Kennedy asked him what it would take to build a rocket that would carry a man to the moon and then bring him back safely to Earth, von Braun said the will to do it. The will is the mental faculty that gives you the ability to hold one idea on the screen of your mind to the exclusion of all outside distractions. See, if you take your imagination, do it. You have goals, take your imagination, and then take yourself there, see yourself already have completed the goal. And then hold that picture with your will. When you go there with your imagination, there is a place. Whatever it is you want, you went there with your imagination, there is a place. You stay there in your imagination. You will attract everything that's required for the manifestation of that picture. We don't work toward the goal, we work from the goal. You get the goal in your mind. Our problem is we measure everything on the physical. And you look at the physical and you say, well, I haven't got it yet. If you think, your conscious mind, if you get an image there of your goal, you've already got it intellectually. If you didn't have it, you couldn't share it with me, but if you have it, you can share it with me. You can share with me the idea that you've got in your mind. So you've already got it there, haven't you?
Right.
As you get emotionally involved with that idea, you've got it also on an emotional level. You've got it there. You've got it intellectually, you've got it emotionally. The only place you haven't got it is physically. Now, there's a period of time must elapse for that idea that you have intellectually and emotionally, for that idea to move into physical form. We understand.
How much time?
Pardon?
How much time does it usually take?
We don't know. We don't know. That's the only thing we don't know is the gestation period for an idea. We know what the gestation period is for wheat. We know what it is for a carrot. We know what it is for a baby. Moment of conception is about 280 days. We didn't always know these things, but we do now. We don't know what the gestation period is for a spiritual seed, and that's what an idea is. But it grows by exactly the same law. And so if we hold that idea in our mind, it must by law manifest in form. It moves into form. Now that is called the perpetual transmutation of energy. It's one of the laws of the universe.
Wow. There was something that that you shared just a moment ago that reminded me of an interview I did with Joe Dispenza recently, where he said we're really good at remembering the past and actually building a story in our mind about something traumatic that was actually way worse in our mind than it actually probably was in person. We're really good at remembering these stories. But what we need to do, he said, is to remember the future. And when he said that, it kind of triggered something different. It's like what you just shared. It's like have an idea of the future of what we want to manifest and hold on to that idea and remember the memories of the future as opposed to holding on to the memories of the past so we can move into that as opposed to be stuck in the past.
That's holding you. See, that's what that is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
and it's hard. Why is it so hard? Why is it hard for us to hold on to, or maybe not hold on to, but keep in our minds and imagine the idea of a greater future for us as opposed to constantly being stuck in the past? Why is that hard for so many of us?
Because we're programmed to go the other way. You know, what language do you speak?
I barely speak English.
How about Russian?
Привет, как дела? That's all I know.
Well, the point is, you were raised with the English language.
Yes.
You don't know another language. I was raised with the English language. I don't know another language. I was working with people over in Kuala Lumpur a number of years ago, and they had a little boy, 4 years old. That little boy could speak 4 languages. They thought nothing of that. There's people speak many more than 4 languages because that's the way they're raised. We're the product of our environment from the time we're born. But prior to that, genetically we're programmed. You're genetically programmed from the moment of conception. You get all mom's DNA and all dad's DNA. And God knows how far it goes back on either side. Well, that is programming. That's in our subconscious mind. And that's called a paradigm. That's what it is. It's a program in our subconscious mind. Now, here's the crazy part. You have programs in your phone or in your computer. The people that write the code for these programs are really smart when it comes to writing code. They really know what the hell they're doing. The people that wrote the code for our biocomputer had no idea what the hell they were doing. They don't. They did not. They were writing the code for my subconscious mind and for yours. That's our paradigm. And that probably controls our life to an enormous degree. It did with me until I was 26. Now, I was fortunate when I met Ray Stanford and he got me into the Think and Grow Rich book, and that led me into God knows what else. I have been working at changing that program since I was 26. I'm 86 right now. So I've been at it for a long time, and I work at it every day. Most people don't even know that they have the problem. So they stay stuck their whole life.
What do you think of the programs or the programming that hold us back the most? Maybe the 2 or 3 things that
we were talking about earlier, the self-image. That's programming. And I have a little great-granddaughter, and her mother and father are really fascinating. I'm watching them how they treat this little girl. It is fascinating. Her name is Nora, and if they do anything, they'll say, "Thank you, Nora." Nora, that is really good. I mean, this kid, I think, is going to grow up with just a phenomenal self-image. Now, they have been studying this all their life, and now they've got a little baby, and watch the 2 of them working with her. It's phenomenal, you know. But I think self-esteem has to be one of the biggest problems. That's not really taught in school. It's not taught in many homes. You get into any of the sports leagues, they don't teach much about the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind's controlling how well you play the game.
You had the choice to have a relationship with a particular person or not. So what happens is that we're constantly creating new spaces from which we have another choice.
Right.
And so you kind of see it as this dynamic dance between, okay, now I'm in this situation,